What if the world isn't made of matter, but of thought? What if reality isn't something we inherit, but something we create? Welcome to The Discussion, where we explore the unseen architecture of existence. From ancient philosophy to modern dreams, we follow the thread of idealism, the belief that ideas shape reality, that perception is creation, that the mind is more powerful than we dare to imagine. What is real? What is possible? And if the two are not the same, how do we close the gap? Step beyond the ordinary. Enter the world of ideas. The Discussion with Scott and Sophia. Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Have you heard it from somewhere or not? But if you told men instead of a trans man, trans woman coming into the men's room, you have like a Titan-sized ogre coming in. They say that they're men, but they're clearly not men. They're these gigantic ogres. And we're calling you bigots for not wanting to change with them. They're huge. They're beating you up. They're knocking you around. But we're like, what do you mean? You're a bigot. Those ogres should be able to change with you. That's how it feels.
Like, well, if he's in a dress, he's not a bad person. Like, okay, go in the changing room with them. Take all your clothes off. See how it goes. Right.
Is it crazy?
But women have had to take the brunt of this for a long time.
Too bad.
But that's not all. In addition to losing out on opportunities to Thomas, we also had to share a locker room and change in front of this 6'4", fully intact, naked male. And as I've testified previously, we were not forewarned of this arrangement. We were not asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent to this exposure and to be exploited.
Too bad.
10 is the number of years it's been since I was brutally beaten and raped by a trans-identified male. Up until that point, I was like everybody else, live and let live. Took me one time. This is my first time speaking publicly about this. It took one time to change my mind, to open my eyes and see how our rights and protections are being eroded away.
Too bad.
I take you already to the University of Tampa and Young America's Foundation, which happened to catch one of these fakers coming out of the women's restroom. I think it's just on Friday. Watch.
Excuse me, what are you doing in the women's bathroom?
I'm sorry?
What are you doing in the women's bathroom?
I'm peed.
Okay, but you're a man. Yes, you are. You are clearly a man, and you were just in the women's bathroom. Do you know how much
on the freaking poster telling college students who are uncomfortable, doesn't matter if they're conservative or liberal, young women who are uncomfortable with what just happened on that video, that it is a Title IX sanctioned policy for you to shut up and take it.
Too bad.
So yeah, that's the Uncarved Block. Give credit. We've got Logan from the Uncarved Block with us. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Good.
How you doing? Pretty well.
Hey, how's it going, Alex? Can you hear me, Alex?
Damn.
Uh-oh, he's still having some technical issues.
I'm still robotic.
Oh, okay. You sound a little better now.
Yeah, you misspelled robot.
Yeah. So yeah, man, this segment this show we're gonna be talking about transgenderism from a skeptical viewpoint, from an idealistic viewpoint, and everything in between. And we want to treat, the thing is, I want to treat this discussion with a lot of care. The whole idea isn't to really trigger people or hurt people's feelings or, promote some sort of bigotry or anything like that, but actually just have the discussion because, look, I think with this last election, America's kind of voted, and the statistics tell us that America sort of voted for Trump because they were so tired of this. One of the things was this whole, woke, what they call woke or extra progressive sort of messaging from the left. And so this was kind of like a statement against that, right? And so I think it's worth talking about it then, because, we still have folks on the left that, want to fight for the rights of minorities like transgender people. But then we also have a point of, look, women needs their own spaces. They feel in danger, as the videos sort of captured that, Logan's video. So we kind of just wanted to get into that conversation. But before I did, I just wanted to say one thing. I wanted to sort of define what we mean by transgenderism. And so I'm getting this from Wikipedia. It says transgenderism refers to the experience and condition of individuals whose gender identity differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. This encompasses a diverse group of people who may identify as male, female, a blend of both, or neither, and whose gender expression may not conform to societal expectations based on their assigned sex. Is that kind of how you guys see that?
Yeah.
I would.
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Okay. What is the no part on that, would you say, Alex?
Well, I am what a lot of those folks might call a freaking bigot, because I, for the most part, just believe in the two genders, the male and the female, based on, largely genetics, but, pretty much like functionality. Either somebody, most of the time, overwhelmingly more often than not, somebody's going to be functionally male or they're going to be functionally female. That is, they can reproduce as a male by producing sperm, or they can reproduce as a female by producing eggs.
I see.
So, and I recognize the conditions of intersex, previously called hermaphrodites, but I think some people find the term hermaphrodites to be offensive. So I'm not really meaning any offense by using that term, but that's just a term that I kind of grew up, learning. So.
Gotcha. What do you think, Logan?
Well, I would disagree with that first line that says sex they were assigned at birth. They're still that sex.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Right.
99% of the time, a doctor observing a baby is spot on about what sex it is. It's a 1.7% chance they are intersex. And
I agree with that. Like, I think that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you go down, it said the definition given above. Oh, no. Transgender does not have a universally accepted definition, including among researchers. So there really isn't no definition, any definition.
The way that I see it, I would disagree that sex can be assigned. I think sex is whatever sex you actually are biologically. And that's also the definition of what's a male and what's a woman. It's biological in nature. So gender is something different, though, because I don't think there's one set way that you can express your gender. You can be a feminine male and you can be a masculine female. You can be somewhere in between. We used to call that androgynous. That's actually gender non-conforming, when you're not like a stereotypical woman or a stereotypical man according to society. So I think it's more about non-conformity when it comes to what appeals to the larger or greater society. But that's something that's subjective. That's your own experience. You know what I mean?
So
that
kind of gets into like the relationship between subjective experience and objective reality.
And while most people, function the way that their sex dictates, you know what I'm saying? That's most people. If you are a man with a penis, then usually that's how you identify. But sometimes there can be other factors that contribute to a person feeling that there's a misalignment or that they're somewhere in between. And that's what a true transgender is supposed to be, you know?
Like, you know, when you talk about subjective experiences, those are like personal and kind of internal, right? And they're shaped by individual perceptions in your consciousness. And then you've got objective reality, which is, on the other hand, refers to the external world that exists independently of your perceptions. So, you know, while your experiences can sort of like provide you with information about the world, they're sort of mediated through our senses and cognitive processes. And all of that stuff is influenced by like various factors, like, you know, potential biases or misinterpretations of the external world and the internal world. And this raises questions about the extent to which subjective experiences can serve as definitive proof of an objective reality. Like if, you know, if I was to say, you know, to you, hey, Logan, I'm a Beelaboob. I'm a Beelaboob, man. What would be the first question out of your
What the fuck is a Beelaboob?
Right, what the fuck is a
Sophie got
Beelaboob? Right, that'd be the first thing. And what if I told you even worse? I say, Logan, it's what I am. That's what it is. Would that be helpful in any way?
No.
No, and this kind of like reminds me of the conversation Logan had on the line with the trans ladies. I think you were trying to say something like that at one point, and they just kind of didn't understand that. And it's like,
what gets me about that segment, if I might butt into that, because that shit pissed me off when I was watching it, because this crazy person kept saying to Logan, oh, well, when you go in the bathroom, nobody checks your genitals. Nobody checks your genitals. So how would they know? Like, completely denying the fact that it's usually very obvious, first and foremost. And so, with that being said, it's like, okay. The thing is, a man can use his penis as a weapon. When his penis gets hard, it is like a metal rod, okay? You could literally beat the piss out of somebody. you could literally beat the piss out of somebody with that thing, all right? So a male has a biological weapon that is attached to him. And a man with a penis should not be allowed to come in my space because he can use that weapon against me. Simple as that. So if you want to be in female spaces and women should feel safe around you, then you better get that motherfucker chopped off. Simple as that.
Be a eunuch.
Yeah,
you better be a eunuch.
We had a guy at work transition, and he was a manly man. And I liked him well enough that, you know, I called him she. I didn't make a big deal about it. 6 foot tall, broad shoulders, and had kids, and just decided he's still straight. Just decided one day he was going to transition, and he had that. They put you on a year. What do you want to call it? Observation, maybe, I guess, where they make sure you want to do this. You want to transition. So he has to act like a female, go in the female restrooms, dress as a female. And he came in on our, I worked at UPS, and we had a dock where we loaded the stuff that goes onto the planes and the containers. And he came in and went to the women's restroom, and all the girls I was working with said, well, what? And they went and said something to the supervisor, and they said, well, he has a doctor's note and he can do that.
What?
But they said, well, but he's not having work done. And they said, well, even if he hasn't, he still has the right to go in there because they have to make sure he wants to do this for a year. And I talked to him about it, and I said, so what if he finishes the year? And they said, well, will he still have a penis? And I said, I don't know. And I said, well, they said, we don't want a man in there. And I said, well, what about lesbians? They said, well, lesbians are women. I can handle a woman, you know?
Right.
And, I said, well, so if he gets that chopped off, you'd be okay with him going in there? And they said, yeah. So, but even beyond that, there are violent women. and men are even more violent, and that doesn't alter just because you get your thing chopped off.
Statistically.
Yeah, statistically.
Right, but it does limit a way in which a man can harm me. And I'm a female that has experienced sexual abuse and rape, and I never have experienced that from a woman. So, with that being
And
said, a man can use his aggression in a whole different kind of way, on a whole nother kind of level.
yeah, and I've talked to women, and I've asked them, what would you rather happen? And they'd rather have the crap beaten out of them. They'd rather be murdered. Someone would rather be murdered than being raped. It's just that
Right.
much of a violation.
It is. And you don't never come back from that. That shit stays with you for life. And it can ruin every other relationship that you ever get into.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. I mean, I don't know from experience, but I know from.
And so that's a red flag. Plus, what's up with the exhibitionism? Like, the thing is, a lot of transgenders claim that we are the ones who are obsessed with their genitals. And I'm like, no, it's just that if you have a certain part, which is a penis, you pose more of a threat to a female than another female. That's all we're saying. But a lot of transgender people are hypersexual and are constantly waving their dicks in people's faces, twerking and swinging their dicks and their asses. And they have this compulsion to display their sexuality. And it's like, we used to call that exhibitionism. Why do you get off on taking a shower with other women when you know you still have your male parts? That's exhibitionism. You get off on forcing others to observe your genitals.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah, and that's one of the areas in which I personally take issue with things like the pride parades, the pride celebrations. Myself personally, on a philosophical level, I do not believe that pride in something that is not like a personal individual accomplishment is merited. So to me, all other types of pride are equally silly. Sexual pride, national pride, racial pride,
White pride,
etc.,
black
etc.
pride.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because um, one did nothing to accomplish one's nationality. One was simply born in a given country as a
You
matter
really
of
are a bigot.
circumstance. One did
You
nothing
are
to
a
accomplish one's race. That is simply the way one was born. One did nothing to accomplish one's sexuality. That's not an accomplishment. So why pride?
Wait.
Okay, but I do want to
Telling
say,
me? Well,
Yeah,
let me ask.
go ahead.
This is the problem. Are you telling me that I don't have a right to be proud to be white?
Well, I'm
If
just
I
saying
was,
it's
if I really
I
was,
don't
because I'm not
believe it's
actually.
merited. Like any color, any ethnicity, I don't believe that it's
Yeah, I agree with you.
necessary
I'm just
or
teasing.
productive.
I'd lean
I
that
agree,
way too.
I agree to a certain extent, but I think that if we're going to be intellectually honest, that type of pride often comes from having been oppressed. Okay, like when you're being oppressed or dismissed constantly, then sometimes the result of that is now you're overdoing it. Now you're pushing yourself in the limelight because you want to be seen, you want to be heard. So I think that's what that is the result of. And I'm not saying that it's an especially good way to deal with it, but I think it can be a natural result of being oppressed. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm black and I'm proud. That was a slogan that had to be said, because at one point black people were mistreated and they were looked at as lesser beings. And in order to take power back and feel worth something, you sometimes have to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I would say it's a little more complex than that.
Yeah.
Right. And I can understand that. I would, however, kind of respectfully disagree to an extent. I understand that is a fairly natural response by a lot of individuals. But what I would say is that pride is not always the opposite of shame, right? And people are, or have been throughout history, made or like coerced to feel ashamed because of some circumstance of their birth. And I think that that's wrong. I disagree with that. It's not logical or humane to me. But to kind of, in my perspective, overcorrect to the other end and say, now I got to express pride in that.
In that case,
you don't
then I
have to
could
be
ask-
ashamed, but
right?
is pride merited? Is it?
Yeah, but when you're being hauled off for being gay and thrown in institutions and beat up on the street because you're gay, I mean, come on, like, you can't expect a rational response after repeatedly having things like that done to you. So I do empathize with some of it, because just put yourself in that situation. If you were gay or autistic and everybody just beats the piss out of you because you're autistic, or you're just getting thrown into some institution because you're autistic, at some point you're going to retaliate in the best way that you know how to feel worthy. Like, that's robbing somebody of all of their worth. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you can disagree with it, but it doesn't change the natural psychological response that comes from that type of treatment of people.
I get it, and there's been times when, circumstances have caused me to kind of lose my cool and, act out in an emotional sort of way that wasn't entirely rational. So from that point, I do kind of get it. But if I am able to manage to keep my cool about something, I wouldn't say because somebody is trying to make me feel persecuted or ashamed because of something that I didn't necessarily have a choice in determining. I would, or it's something that I don't believe is reasonable to be ashamed about or persecuted for.
Here's the
then
problem.
I would say I'm unashamed, not necessarily that I'm proud. Like, for instance, I used to smoke weed. It's been a while since I quit. But when I first started smoking weed, it was like, oh, I got to keep it a secret because I don't want my family and certain people to know that I smoke weed because they're going to judge me for it. But then after a while of doing it, I was like, logically, there's not good reasons for all of this judgment and oppression regarding it. And so I would say, you know what? Fuck it. I am a pothead and I am no longer ashamed of it. Like, I'm a pothead. What, you judge me, But of course, I don't do that anymore. But I'm not gonna judge people who do, because, pretty much that's not harming anybody. That's
what do you think,
what
Logan?
I would consider a victimless crime.
Let's let Logan get a word in. What are your thoughts on that, as far as like trans pride, gay pride, and how that factors into this whole thing?
I think Alex is pretty close to my opinion. I don't think anybody should be ashamed of who they are, for the most part, unless it infringes on somebody else. I think when you really have to work hard to get to where you are, especially Black people in this country and some other races had to work hard, and they had walls put up against them simply because of what they looked like. And I think, yeah, that's when your race would play a factor in that. You know, I'm proud to be black and I overcame these obstacles because those obstacles were put in the way because of your race.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that sentiment. And to me, I would simply attribute that to overcoming. I take pride in my strength and my tenacity that I overcame these hardships.
Right.
But I'm proud to be black, bitch. Now what? I want to still say that I'm proud. And
Okay, that's fine.
is that harming anybody?
Nope.
I can't be I can't be proud of my blackness.
Yeah, and and I don't want to get off on that because a lot of people, you'll see a lot of people say, well, if I said I was proud to be white, then all of a sudden it would be racism, it'd be bigotry. And all
I
that
wouldn't
stuff.
give a shit. You should be proud of what the hell you are.
Right. It's
I don't see nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I don't see nothing wrong with that. It's a problem when you say I'm superior to the next person, or
Right.
trying to force somebody to look at your wiener, and stuff like that. That's when we're going too far. But you can be proud of your heritage, your color, your beauty, whatever the fuck you want to be proud of.
Well, since we're all being very skeptical about so many different things, what do you guys say about the science? They say that a trans person's brain is different than a normal or a quote unquote normal person's brain. And so therefore it's not a psychological thing. It's just that psychological problems spin off from societies not accepting people for who they are. Their brains are different. My question is, how can we tell the difference between a very feminine man's brain and a trans person brain? Could we really tell the difference? What do you guys think?
Not really. You wouldn't be able to, because the only thing that brain function shows is that feminine males, for example, have similar responses to certain things, like women would respond to a certain stimuli, and a male would respond differently. So there's a different kind of brain activity that is more closer to how a female's brain activity is, but it's still somewhere in between. It's not that doesn't mean that person is a woman or that person is a man. It just means that part of their brain is more active that just usually or generally isn't that active in males. So but if that's the case, then we're all trannies, because we all have estrogen and we all have testosterone, right? And males have more testosterone and women have more estrogen. But what if you're the type of male that produces more estrogen? That just makes you different. It puts you in a separate category. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't.
Alex?
Well, I would just say that I don't entirely recognize the validity of transgenderism. And I believe that a lot of times that it's, simply the result of, people that have some qualities that are generally attributed to the opposite gender. And so they might be like gender non-conforming in that regard. And there can be some underlying mental health issues or neurodevelopmental issues where individuals can kind of be guided towards you don't fit in here, you don't fit in there, so we're gonna push you into this other group, and that's where you belong. But I don't believe that there's one a specific way to be a man, and there's not one specific way to be a woman, where everything else is invalid and they have to be shoved into this box of transgenderism. I don't believe in that. I believe in people are born male, they're born female, some are born like intersex, and everybody's got to find out. They have to discover through the process of living how they manifest, in the body that they were born into, and that trying to, basically butcher oneself, or pay somebody else to be the butcher, is just ridiculous.
What do you think, Logan?
Well, when I first got drawn into this whole discussion of transgenderism, one of the things they brought up was that study. So I investigated it, and from what I can tell, the sample size was too small. They didn't include certain variables. I've read stuff from Colin Wright. He's a biologist, and where is she? Emma Hilton. She's a biologist. She's very active in this movement. She's part of Sex Matters, which is mostly a British feminist movement against trans ideology. But anyway, they say that, for example, Colin Wright said that they didn't include, say, gay people. So if you have a transgender that is gay and a gay man who is cis, I hate that word, that maybe their brain scans would show the same because they're gay, not because one of them is trans. So if somebody brings that up, I would just say that it's not established. It was too small a sample, and they didn't take in all the variables. And like Alex was saying, what about just a feminine man? A feminine man that doesn't identify as trans.
Yeah, I don't see how.
But then we're talking about dysphoria, though. I think when it comes to transgenderism, they have to have dysphoria.
Some of them claim not to have dysphoria.
Well, then I don't think that would qualify as being trans. I mean, seriously, because that's the whole premise of it. I have dysphoria. I feel like I'm in the wrong body. Therefore, I must transition to keep myself from committing suicide, etc., etc. So,
but that's fear mongering, especially when they say that to parents.
I'm just saying, if that is the definition of transgenderism, then everything else has nothing to do with that. So we are rightfully saying anybody shouldn't be able to just walk in women's bathrooms, because it could be any of those things. It could be a fetish. It could be that you just perceive things more like a female does. It could be so many damn things. You have to supposedly you have to have dysphoria.
Well,
right? We can look it up.
Oh yeah. Well, how does the whole neuroplasticity thing play in? I've heard so many. I think every trans person I've ever spoken to or ever met in my life has a backstory that includes some sort of abuse, right? And I'm just wondering, does that experience help shape a person's brain to be a particular way?
I think that's very valid.
Well, I think that
go ahead.
I think you have people that have dissociative identity disorder, and the female that they want to identify as, a lot of times it's just an alter ego. And so then you also have feminine males, though, who are being fast-tracked down that road. But there's still a difference between somebody who's experiencing a more feminine experience and somebody that has dissociative identity disorder. And it's been proven that a lot of transgenders actually do have DID and other various mental illnesses.
Autism, PTSD.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say is that true transgenderism or whatever, what they define as true transgenderism, is very, very rare. Extremely rare.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, like that video, the clip of the video Scott showed where that one guy in his hot pants. No, I do not believe that's a transgender person at all.
No.
Who was that?
It was some guy in Florida. It was in the clip that Scott showed at the top of the hour.
I think I missed that.
I'll play it again.
That woman followed the woman who videotaped that guy. Actually follows him all the way out. I cut it, but she was very brave. She follows him all the way out onto the property and reported him to the campus police.
Yeah, I remember that. That was kind of big news. Let me show it so you understand what's going on. Hold on. Let's widen the screen.
Excuse me, what are you doing in the women's bathroom?
I'm sorry?
What are you doing in the women's bathroom?
I'm peeing.
Okay, but you're a man. Yes, you are. You are clearly a man, and you were just in the women's bathroom.
Yeah, that guy.
That guy. Yeah, I don't think that's I think that's an autogynephile.
Yeah. I don't agree with this shit at all.
Yeah, he was sketchy.
No.
And man, you see people like that in Florida all the time. Like
this shit just this shit is not okay. I don't care what nobody says. That shit is not okay. No. Because we're talking about, man, I don't know. That shit makes me angry because that's not okay, man. It's not okay.
Mm-mm. I mean, if someone like that were to go in the bathroom and I knew my daughter was using the bathroom I was waiting, I mean, I would have to physically stop that person from going in the bathroom with my daughter just out of protection.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not because I'm a bigot. And someone like Matt Dillahunty or somebody would probably say, oh, you're a bigot. Who are you to judge these people? It's like, dude, you just don't get it till it happens and then it's too late. You know,
what I don't like about it is that's basically invalidating the experience of a biological woman who feels threatened by that. And you're just basically saying, oh, why are you being so irrational? You shouldn't feel threatened by that. Like, so now you're telling me what type of experience I'm supposed to have.
Right.
Yeah.
So like Joel asked, guys, examples of insincere people doesn't disprove someone else being sincere.
I like to err on the side of caution. And, assume that somebody who is physiologically male is capable of doing physiologically male things. And, I mean,
So let me ask you this, Joel. Just answer me this. Do you think that a biological male that still has a penis should be allowed in a women's locker room? Yes or no?
Yeah. What do you think, Logan, about Joel's comment?
Well, I think he's correct, but it's kind of, it would flip the argument, and I would have done so if I'd have given the chance on that show. They said, you don't get to know what's in somebody's pants. And, well, that's true, but how do we keep out the bad people? Because if they say, well, nobody stopped me from going in, okay, what about this bad person? Are they going to stop him? Maybe you're not bad, but how do they know? And the only way to prevent that is, regrettably, to make it, well, it's really up to women. But if at least half, in one video I posted, well, I think Scott was part of that. I don't know, but no, I wasn't. I posted polls, and over 50% of women do not want a trans person in their bathroom.
Right.
And actually, I found a poll in England, and if you specified, it was 1% if you just said a trans person. And then if you said, well, if this trans person hasn't had bottom surgery, the number increased. So women are concerned about that penis, and it's their spaces, and they need to decide. And unfortunately, the only way is to say that no trans people can go in a female space, and then we have to decide. The trans person will say, well, if I go into the trans woman will say, if I go into a man's room, I'm going to be beat up. So, but the solution should never be, we're going to let them go into female spaces if females don't want it. That should never be the solution.
Right. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like Joel Davis says, I think the question doesn't address my comment. I'm happy to answer it, but it's a little challenging in the live chat as we discussed. I guess what he's saying is it's a little complicated and not that easy.
Yeah, but I mean, he's saying he's saying just because a trans woman may still have a penis, that doesn't mean she has a bad intent. But that I could say that for any other male.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not every man out here wants to rape a woman. Yet we still don't have men. Yet we still have men's spaces and women's spaces.
Joel, if you go to my channel, the Uncarved Block, and watch the video that were at the top of the hour of Matt Dillahunty says too bad to women. One of the clips is from a fellow swimmer of Riley Gaines that was in the locker room, and not Riley Gaines, Leah Thomas.
Okay.
Riley Gaines is one of the other swimmers, but there was another swimmer that's not Riley Gaines, and Leah Thomas is. They stated was walking around with his dong hanging out in front of a rape victim, and that is, like Sophie said, that's hard to deal with. You have that. It's hard to. I don't think they should accept it, but it's hard to accept. Period. And so I think that's what Sophie said. In a changing room, should Leah Thomas be walking around with his dong hanging out? And 1 in 6 women have suffered sexual violence. A woman gets raped every 68 seconds. So the odds are good that Leah Thomas is going to be in front of a rape victim. And you don't know that until it happens. So I think Sophie's question is very simple, yes or no. There is no gray area with that situation.
Right. And what are you saying then? You saying that you didn't say anything like that. Well, what are you saying? If you still have a penis, you shouldn't be allowed in a woman's space. Because what makes you different from any other biological male other than that you identify as a woman?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty actually kind of narcissistic and insensitive for somebody to identify like that and then force themselves into women's spaces and say you can just fucking get over it, you can just fucking deal with it. Like the way I see it, that's a very like toxic, like male way to think and act, actually. So are you actually manifesting some kind of femininity when you're talking and acting like that?
So
you're not even relating to other females when you're doing that. But Scott, can you do me a favor and reread what Joel Davis initially said, because I have a hard time seeing the comments?
I think the first one was, guys, examples of insincere people doesn't disprove someone else being sincere, which we all agree on. I don't think that's what.
Okay, and to that I remember saying that we're not saying that all transgenders are insincere. We're just saying there's a risk.
There's a risk.
If you allow biological males who still have a penis into women's spaces, you still take a risk because you really never know who's sincere and who isn't, right?
Right. And then you asked if a guy has, if someone has a penis, should they be able to go into a woman's spaces like a bathroom? And then it was like a yes or no question. And he was saying, I think that the question doesn't address my comment.
I don't see how, though.
So,
how does that not address it?
Yeah, because you're basically saying that I think we can all agree there's insincere people. That's the problem.
Well, what I would say is that one can be sincere and be sincerely wrong.
So basically all we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out, we don't want to invalidate the experience of anyone, right? Your subjective experience is your subjective experience, right? And we're not trying to invalidate that. But a woman's subjective experience, and I would say even objective experience, is that a man or a biological male who has a penis can use his penis to harm a woman. And that's why we have male spaces and we have female spaces. So how do we get around this whole thing where women are taking a risk in case an imposter comes in there? How would you rectify that other than what we're proposing?
Because the question, it's not about the sincerity of the person, which is what I was commenting on. It's not about the sincerity of the person.
Well, I can address the sincerity of a person. And again, this is from women. I have, like I said, there's an organization called Sex Matters. I recommend looking up their website. One of their best spokespersons, I'm in love with her, is Helen Joyce. She says nobody will debate her on this topic. And I wish someone would, because I would love to see her against Matt Dillahunty. She would drive him into the ground. She's such a strong person. But she said, it's not just that these bad things could happen. It's comfort. She said, I have my best friend Joe over here, but I don't want him in the bathroom with me while I'm doing my stuff, while I'm changing my tampon, while I'm, piddling, while I'm pulling my panties down to my knees. She said, he's my best friend. He's a guy. I don't want him in there. And it's also a comfort. So that addresses your question, Joel. Even the sincere people will make them uncomfortable just because it's a woman thing. They do womanly things in there.
Exactly.
It's the opposite sex. Like I was saying that too to Alex earlier today. Like if I'm in a relationship with the special person I'm in a relationship with, I don't care to see any other male's private parts.
Yeah. Right. When my wife and I first got married.
Yeah, go ahead, Logan.
When my wife and I first got married, it took about a year for her to let me see her take a potty,
Yeah, and we can be like that. Like it's not easy for us.
Yeah.
Right.
It makes us feel extremely uncomfortable, and so why nobody cares about that part of it?
Like hell, even myself as a male, like when I get into a relationship, I'm not going to be immediately comfortable with my partner, barging into the bathroom while I'm peeing. I'll be like, excuse me, I'm taking care of my business really quickly.
Right.
Yeah, it's regardless if that person is going to see me naked. It's a weird, time. Like everybody's got to answer the call of nature, and I don't necessarily want company, But when it's a communal, like a public restroom, you go in the restroom that's for your gender.
Two of my best friends that I've done a lot of stuff with. I've been skinny dipping, they've been skinny dipping, but that I have never seen their penis. They would get under the water and then take off their shorts. And then before they got out of the water, they would pick up back on their shorts. And they're my best friends and they don't want me to see them naked.
Right.
And you probably don't want to see them.
No, naked. I don't want to. It wouldn't bother me, but no, I don't go, hey, I want to see you.
Right. Like it's just so natural. And it's like, I understand that some people are sexually more liberal and that's fine, but you can't fucking expect everybody else to be the same way.
And even if there's a divider there, you can't see them. You still don't want them in there of the opposite sex. Especially.
I mean, I've had some crazy experiences. Like I grew up in Germany and I would go swimming at public pools. and they had these locker rooms where you go and change and shit. And there were perverts drilling holes into the wall and peeping toms and all kinds of shit, like, and it would always be some perverted male doing some shit like that. So we're kind of what's the word? We just kind of expect males to do shit like that because it's happened to us all of our lives, you know? We just don't feel comfortable with males that close to us if they're not our dad or our husband or something, you know?
Yeah.
I would really like to know in cultures, cultures that don't have, we'll say, some tribe in the Amazon.
Mhm.
I'd really like to know what their women do. Do they just do it anywhere? Do they go in private? What's expected of the men and women as far as that goes? I'd really be curious.
I'm pretty sure they have their own private spaces.
Like a certain designated area for women.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking.
I really don't know, but I've never really been to visit, any like tribes where people run around like half naked or like mostly naked, or been to like a nudist like colony or nude beach or anything like that. I've never been to any of those spaces, but I've contemplated those things philosophically. And what I've discovered about myself is that I don't have a problem with nudity and people like running around unclothed if everybody could be fucking mature about it. The problem in I guess a fair amount of Western civilization, but I could just really speak from the United States, is that a lot of people can't be mature about it.
Well, what I learned, because I'm part Hawaiian, and I have people who actually live in the mountains. I've got cousins and uncles and people like that, and they call this mehu. And men, typically men are responsible for farming and cooking, and men are required to keep the kapu of men, which means that they're not included when they eat with women, right? So it's something separate. Teachers are, can be women, but on like dances and chants and things like that, women are caretakers. So there's differences, there's distinctions, and they keep their distance when it comes to things like nudity and even, like I was saying, roles, and that's just their culture, and I think it's probably similar like in Amazonian tribes and people like that. Yeah, it's interesting, and even when it comes to like with Hawaiians, when it comes to gay men or feminine men, they call them two-spirited, and this is where these men are accepted in the culture, but they just sit with the women and do the women things, and they're happy to do it because
or they switch between male tasks and women tasks,
right,
and that's what
true.
kind of what made them have a high status, because they were able to switch it up.
Both, right, exactly. That's true.
It made them more valuable.
Yeah, because they could like go and hunt with the other guys, and then at the same time they could prepare the food when they got back, and
a lot of times they would do things like take care of orphan kids and things like that, where they could provide that kind of nurturing that a woman could too. And so they would take over tasks that regular men aren't really prone to.
Right. And so when I was looking at that and really thinking back on Hawaiians and Indians and people like that, I was just thinking like doesn't seem like it's ever been such a big controversy for these cultures. Yet everybody seems to be pretty happy, and there's no real big problem. But for some reason in the West, we have social media, we have all this technology, we have all this now virtue signaling and politics involved, and it becomes very ugly. And why is that?
I think what it comes down to is people who are close to the land like that and are very natural, to them that's just natural and normal, and it doesn't provoke any type of sexual feelings in them. But in the West, we exploit people sexually, and basically we're just corrupted here because everything's for profit. So everything gets perverted and corrupted, and everybody's sexually exploited, and all that stuff gets you away from nature and makes your mind corrupt. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're being exposed to all these different crazy things. I mean, people are hooked on pornography, and every time you're driving down the highway, you're seeing billboards of naked women and directing you to the porn store. And there's just so much of it. I'm guessing it corrupts people to where they're no longer thinking wholesomely, So in that environment, I don't really want you in my space, because we're already living in a country where everything is about sex.
And a lot of that, I think, has to do, and we've been over this before, here in the West, we have a very strong, Christian background, like a very, we have a very, what do they call it? Like, I can't even think of the name of it, but a very Christian-y sort of background where sex is a shame, and we have all of these cultural influences that kind of make sex taboo already. And so that may have a lot to do with it. That is why we see a difference between our culture.
Well, I mean, I grew up in a place that was pretty atheist, and I was raised atheist and sexually kind of liberal, but we still don't believe in the shit that's going on in America. We still know.
I've talked with he's a scholar of religion, or he's a professor of religion, and he's lived in several places. I know he's lived in South Africa, and right now he lives in South Korea. And I asked him about this, and he said no, this is not an issue in the countries I've lived in. This is purely mostly an American thing, and they think you guys are crazy. And one thing I wanted to tie into, I don't know if Scott's Hawaiian relations, or if that's a religious thing or just a cultural thing, or both, I guess it could be. But, I saw we had Victor in the chat, and we had somebody that also seemed religious, probably Christian. And that's another thing to address Joel's sincere, is we have people that have sincerely religious beliefs that say a woman cannot be alone in a space with a man. I know some Muslims are very strict about that. And then you have this person that has a sincere belief that they're the opposite gender. So whose sincerity overrules the other? And I say it's the one that sign says women are female on the door, then it's their sincerity that overrules the trans person's.
Right, because he comes around and he says, well, Alex, I agree about protecting the vulnerable, but no one is more marginalized than trans people in this country. And so I see us as needing to stand up for them. So the women aren't as vulnerable as the trans women, in his view. And I think in my opinion, that's sort of a conflation. Trans people may be looked at as marginalized from a societal perspective. Perhaps that's true. But as far as physical ability and the ability to harm someone, I think that the woman would be more vulnerable than the trans woman in that case.
My thing is also, I agree with that, but also if you as a transgender woman or man have all your rights, you're allowed to vote, you're allowed to work, you're allowed to go to school, join the military, whatever. If we've come so far to where you're just a normal, respectable person, even though you're trans, then why does that have to include sharing a personal space with me? How is that in any way, discriminatory or not standing up for trans rights? That's not really a right for you to share space with me where I become the more vulnerable one.
And it's almost kind of like valuing one person's experience over another's.
Right. Like, why can't we just respect each other? Like, we can make unisex bathrooms.
Yeah.
And then whoever wants to go in there can go in there.
Yeah,
you know what I
mean, but those are things that already exist in a larger businesses, like airports, malls, and in certain places. They won't just have communal bathrooms where they're like, this one is for men and they have a bunch of like stalls and whatever. This one is for women, they have a bunch of stalls. But then they also have like just individual bathrooms that anybody can use, So, I mean, there are already solutions in place, and unfortunately, not every establishment can have those individual bathrooms where it's some, trans identifying person can go and not have to feel like they're being judged. But I mean, I struggle to, have what I consider to be too much consideration for those people, because again, I'm not entirely convinced of the validity of that. I am convinced of the validity of people, being born male and identifying as male, born female, identifying as female, born intersex, and whatever the hell they want to express. I believe in the validity of all those things. Trans, like, you can't actually change your gender. That's a biological fact. And if it were possible to scientifically, like, with advanced medical technology, for one person to actually change their gender from one to the other, I would still consider that to be nothing more than a colossal waste of resources that could have been better allocated.
I mean, technically, that's
like
just
feeding
the
homeless, whatever, a bunch of social issues.
But technically, that's just turning yourself into a unique, biologically speaking. And in that case, you probably would be less of a threat to a woman. And so I wouldn't care if you came in my bathroom and you don't have a penis anymore. But as long as you still have a penis, and you haven't done the actual transition, the full transition, anybody can say they're trans. And this is the issue that we're talking about.
Yeah. And by the way, Logan's going to have to scoot on off here in a little bit. And I just wanted to say thank you for joining us, Logan, man. You've really helped create like a good content here for the channel. And I'm so happy to talk about the issue. And again, you guys, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to build the channel out so we can have really good conversations like this. But anyways, yeah, Logan, thank you so much for dropping through, man. I really appreciate it. We'll hopefully do more.
Sorry, my dog. Shut up. Nice to meet you, Logan.
You too, Alex.
Thanks for being a part of the show. It was good having you.
Thanks for having me. This is currently one of my favorite topics, so I'd probably do this anytime. I would like, perhaps, maybe Scott and I could work on it in the background and go through some videos of trans people that I don't know how much they agree with us, but they do agree that trans ideology is an issue. And maybe we could do a show on trans people that actually somewhat agree with us, or maybe they agree with us fully. So,
yeah,
do that sometime.
That
So
would be very
they
interesting.
know it's just not straight people or non. I guess I should say non-trans people saying this. Since
And
not all.
they exist. They exist. I have friends like that as well.
Yep. All right. Well, you guys take care.
All right, man.
If you guys
See
keep
you
it
around.
going, I'll listen later.
Okay.
Okay.
No problem.
Take care.
Yep. So the other part of this I wanted to kind of get into was, you know, because we're idealists, you know, non-dualist idealism. How does that really factor into the whole trans debate from a metaphysical viewpoint? Like, you know, we were talking so much about, you know, the problems, you know, with women's spaces and things like that. But just from a philosophical point of view, what are your thoughts on idealism and the experience of being a transgender versus the objective realities of biology and things like that? Like, how does idealism fall into this?
Well, I think from an idealist perspective, transgenderism is more of a mental thing. You know, it's influenced by your subjective experience. There can and often are biological factors that contribute to it, but largely it's based on your mental state, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Like for me, idealism is to say that everything is ultimately mental anyways. But at the same time, under idealism, which is separate from solipsism, you know, there is an external world. There's this objective world out there, so to speak. Even though it's mental as a property, we have a disassociation. So let's say if someone gets drunk, you know, and we have these correlates, you know, blood alcohol level, for example. Well, that's what being drunk looks like from a disassociated boundary. So if somebody was, say, trans in their brain, or they're real feminine man or what have you, and they look a little different, they talk a little different, their brain is formed a little bit different, whatever, that's what that condition looks like from a disassociated boundary, right? So same with anything else, you know, any sort of condition or difference that we can point out in the world. So I would say that it's kind of in the same, we face the same issue under materialism. Like materialism would say, well, a trans person's brain will be different looking. It will be physically different. Whereas idealism would agree. It's just that the nature of what we call physical is actually some sort of mental property, something mind-like. Whereas a materialist would say, no, it's matter. It's something like matter or something like that. So very similar. So maybe that's a good example, is that they're kind of similar, but fundamentally different, because it all goes back to how we're defining matter and physical and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a similar debate, because some say that transgenderism is biological and it has biological aspects that dictate this experience, and some say no, it's purely mental. And I think that it can sometimes be biological and sometimes not. You know, like, how do we know?
Right. So Joel Davis asked, so why do some of us look male and some of us look female? What is it about the fundamental mind that causes that? And so
biology.
Yeah, like the nature of reality is what determines that. Just like under a materialist point of view. Like you could ask a materialist, why do some of us look male and some of us look female? And they'll give you a story about how all of that stuff happens in reality. And we would say the same thing. It's all the same thing. It's just that the nature of matter is going to be some form of mind rather than some inexplicable form of matter, which on idealism really doesn't make sense, because matter sort of breaks down into a mathematical sort of wave or equation, something like that, which is an abstraction. It's not really, it has no standalone existence. So though that's where the problems come in, is that basic fundamental property. But as far as why things look different, why are things, you know, why is it that when I damage my brain, my conscious experience is different? That's another thing a materialist will always ask an idealist. Like, if everything is mind, then why is it when you damage your brain, your conscious experience differs? That seems like a defeater. But how would you answer that, Sophia?
I don't know. The way I see it, objective reality as we seem to experience this is real. It is a real experience. But I would say that it's not, there's something else that, like, I'm saying that thought has to come first. You know, that's what I'm saying. Thought has to come first. That doesn't mean that, okay, if I think up something, right, and I create something, let's say I think up an image and I paint it on a canvas, that doesn't mean that something else couldn't fuck it up. Like if I spill my drink on it or something.
Mm-hmm. So
you know what I'm
Master
saying?
Maverick, yeah, exactly. No, I see what you're saying. Master Maverick here says, for idealism, there is no difference between a man wanting to be a woman or a man wanting to be a cat. Okay. I think I would agree with that. But there was another comment that was said above. Gender identity from an idealist perspective is that it is wrong and immoral because you are damaging the vessel of the mind. And I'm not really sure if that really follows. I wanted to kind of share my screen because I did a little AI search on that just to get a composite of ideas. You know how it goes on the web and it kind of pulls information together, right? So what does idealism say about gender identity? And this is what it came up with. It says, gender identity and idealism refers to the concept that a person's internal sense of their own gender or their gender identity is primarily based on their subjective experience and perception, often aligning with an ideal self rather than solely relying on biological sex assigned at birth. And it goes on to the spectrum. Well, it goes on to like subjective experience, you know, which is different than what you may look at like objectively with biology and things like that. But remember, under idealism, though, everything is in the mind. Everything, even the biology is in the mind in this cosmic mind, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But there's a difference between your subjective mind and what the objective mind is telling you. So is there a problem there? That's the question. And I think it just falls back to the same problem.
It's like I said earlier, most people identify with what their sex dictates. But some people, you know, are more concerned with their inner experience. And two-spirited people express themselves differently physically based on their inner experience. Because, I mean, we can say, okay, biologically speaking, women can only be owned by women because only women can have babies, only women have periods, only women have those reproductive organs. And with men, it's the same thing, right? But when it comes to feminine energy and masculine energy, is that exclusive to only women or only men? No, we can choose to play around with those inner energies within ourselves, and we can blend them however we want to, and we can express them differently. You know what I mean? That's why we have things like androgyny and stuff like that. You know, we don't have to fit into one or the other perfectly when it comes to expressing it. Biologically, though, I would say there are only two genders unless you're intersex.
Well, see,
Like we're
here's
not,
the
as
thing
an idealist, you don't. I'm just saying, as an idealist, you don't have to deny objective reality.
right, and you know, idealism says nothing about what's right and wrong. Like
At all.
like he says here, that he thinks that from an idealist perspective, is that it is wrong and immoral. The thing about morality and even free will, you could say, is that stuff is subjective. It's not really out there objectively, like what's wrong and what's right, morality, things like that, necessarily. I mean, there's people that disagree, of course, but in my view, I guess I would say that wrong and right are values, and values are subjective by definition. And so you can't really say that. That's kind of like saying under materialism, it's wrong and immoral because you are damaging the physical mind, something like that. I mean, I don't think that really follows. But again, it depends on your definition of idealism. Maybe I'm not understanding that.
So I just had a couple things to say really quickly. We started this video discussing things like terminologies and beliefs, like how you know, now on birth certificates and stuff, they'll say, or you know, official documents will say gender assigned at birth. First off, I don't agree with that at all. Gender is not assigned at birth. It's something that is recognized. Like, yep, that is what
That's
you
sex,
are.
that's sex,
You know,
not gender.
That's not assigned. You know, and then the next thing, really quickly, is that I often like to compare the brain and the mind to the analogy of a computer. Like the brain is like the computer, and the mind is like the operating system and all the software, right? And so, but it's not a perfect analogy, but it more or less works to describe it. But the key difference in the human or the organic brain and mind is that I believe that the causal relationship can go both ways. Not only does the brain affect the capacity of the mind, but the mind can actually affect the brain, like the way that the brain works and develops, you know, the different connections that are made between neurons, like neural pathways.
Hey, Brooklyn
So
Lou, how
I
you doing,
believe
man?
that has a lot to do with
Hey, Brooklyn Lou.
Yeah.
Hey guys. Just
Good to
just
see
so
you. How you been?
I'm okay. All right, lots been going on, but I'm okay. I saw you guys in here. Subject I don't think about all too much.
Right.
But I wanted to maybe jump in and learn something and hear different perspectives.
Okay. Cool,
All
man.
right. Can we-
always love having you.
Scott, can we pull up Joel's previous comment?
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to address it real quick.
Sure. Okay, so he says, but if the nature of reality is caused by the fundamental mind, then it's something about that fundamental mind that must explain why the nature of reality is what it is, right? So can I answer this really quick? Real
Go ahead.
Quick? Okay. The same way materialism answers is the way I would put it, because that's just the nature of reality. Reality is what it is. It is what it is, kind of like Lou told me the other day. Things are what they are, and there's nothing we can do about it. to try to ask why is it this way and not the other way, it may be a wrong question. Maybe it's just that's just the way it is. Anyways, go ahead, Sophia.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar, like if everything that is or our reality is a reflection or a projection of that mind, then that's just what that mind is. It's all those things. It's masculine, it's feminine, it's violent, it's peaceful. It's all those things.
And along with that, hand in hand with that, Master Maverick says, immorality and idealism is acting out wrath, greed, lust, worldly attachment, ego in a manner that is determined to oneself and or another. That may be true when it comes to theistic. So let me put it this way. You've got theistic materialism, where people who believe in God also believe in the material world. And then you've got theistic idealist. But I'm not a theistic idealist. I don't really see the God as necessary. I don't see that there's some arbiter of morality behind it all, because then it opens up so many problems, like the problem of evil, all of these other things that exist. So I'm a naturalist. What I'm saying is that the natural world is just the way it is.
Yeah, and I would be a heretic because if God is real, God's insane.
Right. The whole God thing just doesn't really add up for me. Like, for one thing, at least the way I understand the term God is it's all powerful, all knowing, all loving, it's everything, all of this stuff. Then why would it need to create anything? Why would it need worship? Why would it need all the things that it wants us to do? Why would it have commands, all of these things? And I can say that and still be an idealist, because the idealist is just saying that the nature of reality is a little different than saying the nature of reality is materialism, which is also another metaphysical claim that, that's the only difference.
Well, I just want to, because I believe I've expressed this on the previous segments, but I'm just reminding people that I'm not fully on board with idealism. I don't reject it outright.
Right.
I'm not fully on board with materialism. I have some draw towards naturalism and like animism, and the way I'm thinking about it in terms of like the whole the nature of reality, the nature of mind, and how it pertains to gender and gender identity. I'm not sure if a sort of fundamental mind which may underlie all reality is necessarily gendered, like at all.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Exactly. The way I'm looking at it is, gender might just be a purely a result of the physical biological existence, and we could attribute certain aspects of the universe towards being like a kind of a masculine aspect of existence, or like a feminine aspect of existence, like a creation and destruction and like a change. But to some extent, I might say you could say that's kind of anthropomorphizing nature.
Right. Well, see, here's a question that is put forth, and I think this kind of goes to it.
Can you go to his previous question, because I want to respond to him.
Oh yeah. God is insane. Need you to elaborate. Go ahead, Sophia.
Okay. What I'm saying is, idealism basically states that consciousness splits itself into disassociated states in order to be able to observe itself. And that's obviously being done to be able to approve itself, right? Not approve, improve, sorry. I guess. So in that sense, it's comparable to dissociative identity disorder. And that's why I jokingly say God is insane.
Gotcha. So then another thing he says is God equals the prime cause with independent will, uncaused eternal, pure awareness. Okay, I can go along with that. Why God created existence? God is never satisfied and constantly seeks improvement. If that's the case, this gets down to my point, then that wouldn't be defined as a God the way I understand the word God, because God is complete. God is perfect. God is always satisfied because God is the embodiment of absolute peace, infinity, and all of that, right? Perfection. And he doesn't need to constantly seek anything. If he does, then it's not a God. You're talking about some alien. You know, you're talking about some other...
That's just an idol that seeks to be worshipped.
Right. And I always say if there's a being that requires worship, then it's probably not worth worshiping.
Right. But if there's just pure awareness that seeks to improve itself, that's not necessarily a God.
Yeah. And then he says, idealism doesn't make sense without an initial first cause mind. Well, I'm not sure how that follows. Again, we have
what does he mean with what is an initial first cause mind? I don't get that statement.
Well, I guess a lot of people say that, you know, in reality, everything is caused by something. In reality, every event has a cause. Everything has a cause. But we know that's simply not true when you go to the quantum level, for example. So there's domains of reality where causality just doesn't make sense to talk about. So we can't just say that there must be a first cause in the case of God when we know that there are cases in reality where causality doesn't even apply. It's kind of like the whole thing about block universe, like block time universe. Everything exists in like a frozen block. That's Einstein's idea of block universe. How do we know this is true? Well, if it's true, then you should have things like time dilation. Well, 60 years later, we discovered time dilation. We now have GPS, all of these things. So we kind of have a little evidence to support the block universe theory, which actually is very consistent with the idealistic view, the natural idealism that I'm talking about, where we don't really need a first cause mind. We don't need a God to create everything from nothing. Reality just is.
Where is he essentially asking where consciousness came from?
Yeah, he's saying, you know, it has to be a God. Like there has to be some kind of cause to the consciousness, or that's like asking, you know, why does the earth, there must be a God because we exist as people on a planet. There must have been a planet creator. There must be,
I don't know, like the only logical conclusion to me is that it just had to always be. Because if you say, okay, this had to have a cause, then what caused that? And then if that had a cause, what caused that? And then you're dealing with infinity. It'll go on and on and on. So,
or there was something that was first. Like I'm inclined to believe.
But where did that come from?
I'm inclined to believe that there may have been some sort of a hypothetical, theoretical beginning for everything, and I don't believe that, you know.
But that goes back to what Scott was saying. That goes back to
I don't believe that anything, let alone everything, came from nothing. But I believe in the distinct possibility that everything came from one.
Okay, but that goes back to what Scott was trying to say, that there wasn't necessarily a cause for the first thing.
Right.
Singularity
may have just always been.
Yeah, like, that's what we're saying, Alex.
Like I did a quick search on causality and quantum mechanics, for example, and AI overview says quantum mechanics is considered acausal, meaning it can't always identify the causes of observed effect or predict the outcomes of identical causes. However, some say that quantum mechanics can teach us about causation, and so it goes into indefinite causal orders, quantum uncertainty, quantum causal inferences, inference, information processing, different things. So the science says that, you know, quantum mechanics, you can't really talk about causality in the same way. And so if that's the case, then we can't really just say that reality must work under our classically understood mechanics of the world, because we don't have any access to like different domains of reality like quantum mechanics, which shows this acausal relationship, right? So that's the only thing I was bringing up. I'm not saying that there necessarily cannot be a God or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's not necessary to invoke just for the sake of parsimony.
But what even is a God though? Like people throw this word around. What even is a God? God could be just consciousness. What the fuck even is a God?
Right. Like we have to really define it, you know.
Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and bow out at this point. I may not be back for the rest of the segment. I'm gonna go ahead and take care of our animal and stuff.
Okay. Okay, man. Thanks for coming through, Alex. Appreciate everything.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later in the same house.
Yeah. So using this classical logic, there are three options. 1, a prime cause. 2, no cause. 3, an infinite regress of cause upon cause. So 2 and 3 are irrational, yeah, from using classical logic. But if you're using quantum logic, it's not necessarily irrational.
Right. And we just really don't fully understand that yet, and it's okay to say we don't fucking know.
Yeah, like Joel Davis says, can't identify the cause doesn't mean there is no cause. Very true. That's very true. But until we can identify it, we don't know, right? So why even bring, just for the sake of parsimony, just for Occam's razor, why make extra assumptions when it's not necessary? You know, especially when we're talking about metaphysics and things we don't really know about. And just to let everybody know, when I say I'm an idealist, I lean that way.
Are you
not necessarily that I know this to be the case. I'm ultimately agnostic about most things in the world. I just have leanings. I have opinions and leanings. You know, my opinion, I kind of lean towards the no God hypothesis in some ways, depending on how you're going to define God. But it doesn't mean that I know exactly for sure that there is no God. But anyways, I thought I'd throw that in. What do you think, Lou, so far? What are your thoughts on everything so far?
Well, what I was hearing is a couple things. Obviously, it went awry of the gender identity, right? It went into this other and the I think that when you go into that first cause thing, you know, all of that is subjective. So it's just a leaning in your mind towards one way of thinking or another. I mean, it doesn't really bring it to a point of a proof or anything. Right. You know, obviously people who have faith, they have a leaning towards, you know, this first cause is the God that they attribute it to, right? So if you talk to a Muslim, they'll say, well, the first cause is Allah. You know, if you talk to a Christian, they'd say the first cause is, you know, Jehovah, Yahweh. But all of that is, in my understanding, just pretty much an opinion. So it doesn't amount to much. It's kind of like a 50-50 proposition, you know.
Yeah, and Joel Davis says, well, a God is a vastly powerful supernatural person. Well, where's the evidence for this?
I don't believe in that. I don't believe in no such thing.
Yeah, like how can you,
I
okay,
think he was
great, but
just
where is this
responding.
person?
I think he was just responding to me though when I was saying, "What the fuck even is a god?"
Oh yeah. Occam's razor also leads us to God because we ground the many precepts that atheists have, math, logic, and forming nature, in God. So atheists presuppose many things. We presuppose just God. So we have another presuppositional apologetic right here that says we can just say that God is the single explanation. But you see, the God himself entails, so many other properties. Like it entails all loving, all powerful, all of these different things, possibly depending on how you define God.
I only know God, what the meaning of God in association with religious Abrahamic gods, and that type of God I don't believe in. Period. That's just a egomaniac type of human being. That's not. I don't believe in that.
Right.
I also want to say that I do think everyone has some presuppositions. I've been thinking a lot about that since I had my encounter with a presuppositionalist.
Yeah, that was fun.
And I would say
I saw that.
I would say that we all have some presuppositions, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like any of us can say we have no presuppositions.
Right.
So the presuppositionalist who's a Christian, they have their presupposition. And the thing is, the most that can get somebody, like taking the presuppositionalist side of that argument, the most it can get someone is a 50-50, right? I could say, well, my presupposition is better than your presupposition. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't amount to anything. And that's my conclusion on all that,
Right.
Yeah, I agree. You could be just as wrong or just as right. Like, nobody knows.
Yeah, it's just anytime you just insist that your presupposition is correct, of course you can make an argument that supports that, right?
Right.
It doesn't actually solve anything.
No.
Right. Exactly. And Master Maverick asks, universe is material, is it not? Well, that's your presupposition. Because I don't know what you mean by matter. What do you mean by matter, material? I understand it. I understand someone can describe behavior in the world like solidity, color, sound, vibrations, all of these things. But what is that ontologically, metaphysically? What is it? Science doesn't tell us what a thing is. It tells us what a thing does. It describes things. And descriptions are like maps. But we know we don't want to confuse the map for the territory. That's when we run into logical leaps. And so the one thing we do know is our experience, our conscious experience. That's one thing we know primarily. In material matter, what we call matter, all these behaviors, we experience those things as appearances within consciousness. So you have to be conscious first in order to start describing these things. But if you're going to say that the thing is the thing we describe, then what you're ultimately doing is you're kind of confusing the map for the territory. And so I'm just saying, as a logical conclusion, or maybe logical leaning, it seems like consciousness comes first. As at least epistemically, it would come first, and the material world is an appearance. And I don't know, not sure what he's saying here. False. We presuppose just God. Since you don't presuppose God, you must presuppose math, causality. No, we presuppose consciousness, because math, logic, all of that stuff are properties of consciousness.
Of consciousness, exactly.
Yes, You know, those are
None of that
concepts.
would even exist without consciousness. That's what we're saying.
Right. Exactly.
Also, it strikes me because when we talk about presuppositions, I would think some presuppositions are better than others. You know,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like if your presupposition is something that is logical, like he was pointing out, right? I might presuppose logic. I might presuppose math, right?
Mhm.
Those things are pretty solid.
Right.
Now, they might not be perfect, all right? and I'm willing to admit that. Maybe it's not perfect, but it certainly seems a little more solid than a subjective understanding of a supernatural being.
Right. Right.
Seems
You
a little
know.
more
Yeah, I mean,
solid.
we can all agree on it. It's like math, logic, all that stuff. We all presuppose that. We all use it. And so, and for most of us, most people in our everyday life, even for me in my everyday life, that's enough. You don't need to go farther than that. But if you're going to start talking about metaphysics and start talking about, you know, the deeper philosophy, then, you know, math can't explain itself. It's kind of like, you know, how people say, well, the universe comes, you know, it didn't come from God. The universe comes from the laws of math. Well, math is just a description. It's a language. Right. You know, languages don't create things. I can't just say that's a tree and my language created the tree. That's not how that works.
It's just a way to express how nature works.
Yeah, and it's like we have at some point we just have to bottom out and say reality is just what it is. This is just what it is. You know, and people can ask all day, well, why is a woman a female identical to a woman, and why does reality dictate it's described this way? It's like we can't answer that question because we're within reality. It's like,
right,
you know, a scale cannot measure itself.
Right, we can't. That's why materialism is hitting a wall.
Yeah.
Well, there's also you know, are we going to assume there is perfectionism? I don't even like assume there's perfection anyway. Like I look at it in terms of likelihoods, you know. Like,
yeah.
You know, this when someone says like my God is perfect, I don't really understand what they mean if I go deep on that.
Right.
What trips me out is if your God is perfect, why did he create you so fucked up?
Yeah.
He must didn't like your ass very much.
Well, that's where the Bible comes in. That's why we need, you know, the Adam and Eve story.
Oh, it was Satan's fault.
And when you believe certain stories and make that your presupposition, yeah, I mean, you could argue anything, right?
Yeah.
As long as I start with something that I'm not moving off of, if that's my starting point, then you can't argue with me, right? Because I'm already presupposing the conclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Master Maverick, you don't know that. That's an assumption. Uniformity of nature would exist without consciousness. You don't know that because, for example, if consciousness was like a light switch and somebody turned it off universally at the same time across the entire fucking world, instantly no one would have a subjective experience. So how do you know that everything else would still exist? How do you know that? You don't know that. That's an assumption.
Well, you know, uniformity in nature kind of like refers to the philosophical principle that laws of nature are consistent across time and space. And this kind of means that similar situations will always produce similar results.
Yeah, but he's saying without consciousness.
Yeah, and he's saying that with you know, you don't need consciousness for that, right?
But I'm saying that's an assumption, though.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And it's just a prioritization situation. It's like often prioritizing the mind's perception of the world over the objective world itself is kind of like a fallacy, but that's sort of like solipsism rather than idealism. So, and then we have to really define what do we mean by consciousness. Like, see, I parse these things out. Like I say, you know, my consciousness isn't necessarily like, let's look at the quantum field. The quantum field works off a probability distribution. That's really what it is. A probability, you know, there's a probability this thing will happen, that thing will happen, and things can actualize. That could be considered mind-like, you know. And then, you know, we have our meta-consciousness, which we feel love and we like the taste of chocolate and things like that. I don't think for 1 minute that the quantum field cares about the taste of chocolate or understands anything. It's just a baseline of reality, of where consciousness and everything sort of emerges from. And because we know that the universe, reality is non-local, then you can say that everything sort of exists. That our concepts of time and causality, all that stuff is just a human description. But in a deeper, looking at reality from a deeper view, this is not just the mystics. This is what science is telling us. That when it comes to the way reality actually works, fundamentally, everything is sort of wholeness. It's like oneness. So consciousness, all that stuff sort of permeates. It's not this whole separation of linear time and linear events. All these things are sort of bound together through relations, rather. And so, you know, that's the way I kind of look at it. If you really want to talk metaphysics, like, that's kind of what I'm talking about, is that. Now, I'm not saying I'm absolutely right on that. I'm not a physicist. I'm just going by whatever I've read, whatever I've kind of looked at on this stuff. And I've spent a great deal of time doing it, you know. Why we are so effed up. Once we enter the materialistic world, we acquire ego, attachment, greed, lust, and wrath. When we operate out of those, we fuck up. I kind of agree with that. That kind of
but that ain't the question. That ain't the question I asked though. If God is so perfect, why would He create such an imperfect world?
Right, on the hypothesis of God. Yeah.
Why would He even give you as? Why did He even create humans with an ego?
Mm-hmm.
If the original state of being was so pure, then why did He create all of this?
Right, right.
You know, I used to have this conversation with my late dad when he was alive, and I was a fundamentalist Christian. And I used to talk about to him, you know, why he needed to, you know, believe in Jesus and all that sort of stuff. And he would kind of tell me, you know, your thoughts are just out there, you know. It's like he would tell me that I'm living in a different world, you know, a world that I'm creating in my own mind, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And many years later, now I kind of agree with him. It's like, you know, you can create your own reality for the day and keep yourself in just your mental, you know, world. And I think that I don't think that's a positive. You know, I think we should always strive to push through, you know, to find out new things, maybe, you know, find out different ways we might look at things. And you know, I think that you know, this thing about people having their different understandings of reality is all okay. Like, there's nothing negative about that. It's just, again, when people insist that their view is the only way, that's when I really think something's wrong.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
what we're kind of trying to point out when it comes to the whole transgender thing. We are not trying to invalidate any transgender's personal experience, but when you claim that women aren't taking a risk by sharing spaces with people who are biologically still male with a penis, that's kind of infringing upon my rights now. And so where can we find like a balance between the two where everybody's respected?
Hey, I had a question about what, that I didn't hear your discussion about gender and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't here, right? But it seems to me that with gender and human sexuality, what's going on today is kind of transitional, and I think technology plays a big part in that, right? Like women's sports. I think about that. Now, I don't want a man in women's sports, right? I think that would be unfair. So I'd be the first one to say that's unfair, all right? But there is a little deeper issue in that they say, and I haven't figured this out for myself, by the way. I'm just saying these are things I am thinking about, right? Like if I'm a man and I can become a woman, if that is doable, right? If that is possible, and many would say that is possible. That's why we have these surgeries and hormone treatments and all that. So if I'm now a woman, is there really anything wrong with that, with me participating in women's sports? And that would never have happened, let's say 100 years ago. That was impossible, right? It was impossible for a man to go through a transition, maybe to become quote unquote a woman, right? But it is possible today.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that technology plays a role in all this.
I do have to kind of disagree a little bit with that, because the only way a biological male loses his advantages, his physical advantages over women, is if he doesn't experience puberty. So now we can use this technology called puberty blockers, but then it raises the question of, is that even ethnically? I mean, not ethnically. What's the word?
Ethically.
Is that ethic? Like, should we even do that? Should we interfere in a natural process that happens to a teenager?
Mm-hmm.
And then, because that's the only way you're going to avoid having the physical advantages over women, is when you bypass puberty and block it, and
Well,
so
I think I have concluded for myself so far that it would be wrong for children to go through these procedures. Like that's where I'm at right now. Like for a child to go through a transition from becoming.
But what about teenagers and potentially sterilizing them for life? Because that's kind of what happens.
I don't think they should go through any of that. I think that's I so far I think that would be wrong. I look at it as with adults, you're entering a different world.
Right.
Right, and all I'm saying though is technology doesn't really enable an adult male to be physically equal to a female once he's gone through puberty. That's all I'm saying. So where do we go from there?
And that may be very true, and that's something that I think needs to be taken into consideration, But as technology advances, there could become a time even where that could be done,
Right.
And
yeah,
and
it's possible.
That's different.
It's possible.
That would change everything.
Yeah,
in
that might
case.
change the game again.
Of course.
But as of right now, I don't think that people are bigoted or exclusive just because they're saying women shouldn't have to take that risk.
Oh no, I agree. I mean, it's just I agree that's not something like when I watch sports and I'm into sports a lot. So when I hear about, let's say, a guy who was a man and then became a woman and he's dominating in swimming, like we all heard about that, right? I mean, I don't see any problem with saying that person shouldn't be in women's sports. Like, I don't really have a problem with that, because
question for Lou.
Like there's an advantage that's unfair there.
Yeah. A question for Lou came in. Ask Lou, if tomorrow we can turn people into cats, should we turn children into cats?
Well, the first thing is he didn't even agree with children undergoing hormone therapy. So
yeah,
right.
So no, I wouldn't agree that children should be turned into cats.
Yeah, we were kind of at the top of the hour. We were talking about women's spaces. Like, we care a lot about the transgenders. They experience, feeling like they were born in the wrong body or something like that. Well, what about the women who experience fear from having males in their locker room or in their bathroom or something like that? I mean, do they
does
have
their
any
experience count?
Right. Does that count?
I think it all has to count.
Right. That's what we were talking about. It all.
And unfortunately, the only way we can really make sure that we equally get our way here is unisex bathrooms and not allowing biological males who still have a penis and all of the biological advantages over women to go into restrooms. That's all we have right now to mediate that. You know what I mean?
But do you guys agree that technology plays a role, and even into the future, it can change?
Actually,
yeah, I agree.
I agree that it could. That's the solution of most of our moral dilemmas would be technology. Like, if we could create a world where you have your own invisible force field, like T-Jump talks about, where you cannot, it is impossible for you to harm anyone, and it's impossible for anyone to harm you. You have this invisible force field around you at all times, created by technology. Well, then there's no moral dilemmas anymore, because no one can really harm each other, right? So then we wouldn't even be having these conversations, and we as idealists wouldn't even see that as a problem, or we would actually we would want that to happen.
But at the same time, though, I'm a little bit of, I'm kind of old school. I don't want to 100% rely on technology either. Like, I would like to figure out what we can do to remedy these issues and just respect each other.
Meantime, yeah.
In the meantime, if we didn't have all this technology, what would we do? Because I think that would be a better solution. Because before technology, we had to get along, we had to make it work somehow. And in the case that we get the technology that can remedy that, but we also know that technology fails. So we still need something more fundamental that can get us on the same page. You know what I'm saying?
And that's why we're doing this show. We have these discussions. We have to engage in discussion at this point. And if you like what we do, man, like and subscribe. We want to keep having these kind of talks, man, and really exploring a lot of difficult sort of conversations.
What is Al Harding running his mouth about?
I don't know. Al Harding, what are you talking about, man? He says, off at 4 Eastern, don't see a link. Actually forgot the link. I don't know. Al, are you losing your mind, buddy? We're kind of late to your conversation.
He told me earlier, God created a perfect world and it's humans who decide to fuck up women.
See, and this is the thing. I don't have a problem if people want to believe in God and all of these things. I really don't. And the only reason we're kind of pushing back on stuff like that is just to kind of show that people think differently about this stuff. Like, there's other viewpoints, and they're just as valid, as yours.
Right.
And it's not to prove you wrong or make you look foolish or anything like that. It's just to kind of say, we should be a little more tolerant of each other.
Yeah, because I grew up atheist and I can't wrap my mind around that. So should I be ostracized for that?
Right. And Lou's an atheist too, and Lou's very he's very tolerant. Like if you've ever watched Lou's show, you know, Brooklyn Lou,
Yes.
watch his show. He engages with Christians and theists, you know.
He's
theists.
chilling, laid back.
Yeah, and I think he has great conversations. Now the last one I have to question with that Catholic traditionalist, that got kind of hard. Lou had to let him go, man.
And I kind of do agree with what the guy just said. Like they don't make any profit off of women fearing, you know, biological males coming in their space. That has definitely has something to do with it. That's why I said earlier, a lot of trans people are just straight up being exploited.
Right.
Do you think that, let's say, trans in sports is a really big issue? Because I don't think it's that big of an issue.
No.
It's kind of
we were talking about that earlier, that actually the problem is that, like, here's the thing. We were talking about like the whole spaces, like women's spaces, and a lot of the progressive left will say, well, there's such a small percentage of that actually being a problem, so I don't understand why you guys would even waste time talking about it. But the thing about it is, even the trans issue itself is relatively a very small percentage of people in the world, that it shouldn't. You could argue that just having the trans discussion is kind of silly because there's so many, it's such a small percentage of people, much less the sports thing and the spaces thing.
But I do think it's a problem. I do think it's a problem when we have like MMA fighters beating the piss out of biological women. And we had this happen on national TV. Like this guy decided to transition when he was 40, and he had all the benefits of being male, being biologically male. And he was allowed in the ring with a champion fighter, female, and he was beating the piss out of her. Like, she was already down, she was already KO'd, and he was still beating the shit out of her. And I'm like, that should not have happened. You know, we're talking about stuff like that. What can we do to make sure that women are protected in those, under those circumstances? You know what I mean?
I think because I am really into MMA, boxing, and all that stuff, I think that they have to come up with some sort of a system that really identifies someone, you know, in which they can or cannot participate in the sport, you know. And again, technology plays a role in that, right? Like someone was telling me a while back, like, what if, you know, Mike Tyson said he was a girl and now he wants to, you know, fight a woman, you know, in the ring? And of course, I think we all would say that doesn't make much sense, right? You know, something's wrong with that. But if Mike Tyson went through hormone therapy, got castrated, somehow was able to quantify that he was no longer the Mike Tyson we know, maybe we might say, okay, maybe he can participate in that event, right? Mm-hmm. You know, not that it can be done now, but maybe.
As long as he's physically not 10 times stronger than a woman. You know, if we can somehow verify that, then yeah, go for it.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. And I don't think that exists now. Right? I don't think that is the case, that we're not there yet. But it could be 25 years from now, we might be there, right?
Yeah, of course. And there's nothing wrong with that. Master Maverick asks, I have disdain for people that don't believe in God, because the doors they leave open are horrendous, e.g., example, moral anti-realism.
So basically, you don't believe that people who don't believe in God have a moral compass? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, like they wouldn't be moral.
So I need a God to tell me that it's wrong to go rob a liquor store, or that it's wrong to go walk up on somebody and slap the shit out of them. I need God to tell me that. Is that what you're saying?
Apparently so. And I would just say to a person that if you really are serious and you have disdain for people, I would say, man, try to focus in on love, man. Try to like meditate on objects like love and peace and get that in your life, because it's not worth it to go through life just having disdain for people. Look,
that's a strong word.
It's a strong word. I mean, we live in a world with all kinds of people, and for you to be so angry because people believe in God or don't believe in God, like, that's my problem with a lot of things I see on social media.
Sounds very ego-based to me.
Very egocentric.
That means that you think
everyone
that
should believe like you know.
That means you think you're superior, buddy.
Yeah, it's sad. And this goes for atheists too. There's a lot of atheists that just get angry because there's people out there that dare think different than them for whatever reason. And I would just say, look, man, you need to find peace in your life somehow, you know.
Yeah.
Well, he says that the reason why everyone should believe in God is psychological and is as follows. The best pathway to self-realization and ennoblement of being is to posit the highest good that you can personally conceive of and then fully commit yourself to it. Yeah, but not everyone's on the same pathway you are in life. Not everybody's at that spot. Some people may get there, some may not. Some may find peace without belief in God. I think Lou's at peace.
I could believe in my higher self. I could believe in my higher self or my higher nature. Why does it got to be God?
It doesn't have to be. I actually made a little video about that, you know, because I was Christian and I'm not Christian now. And I'm atheist, so I would be considered, a Christian would consider me like cold, right? I'm stone cold. But I don't see it that way. I think I've become more empathetic as an atheist. I think I've become more caring of other people. All right. Now that's just my personal experience. I get that. But I made a video because I don't think you need a God to have peace of mind at all. And no way. I cannot even see that at all.
I don't know why he's comparing a person that doesn't believe in God to an abuser. He just asked, should we have disdain for an abuser? That's just stupid logic. Like, get that shit out of here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, an abuser. So if you abuse my child or something like that, you're damn right I'm going to be angry and I'm going to do something about it because I'm a human being. But to have disdain for someone who believes in God, it's not going to be the same. That's an equation fallacy. You know, that the scales are, you know, off, you know.
That's way off, man.
Disdain, you don't deserve my respect as much as others. Okay.
Nobody cares. We don't need your respect. Now move along.
Yeah.
Here's, you know, my girlfriend is Christian. I don't know if you know that. Do you guys know my girlfriend is Christian?
Yeah,
yes, I heard you mention that.
Show. Uh-huh.
Now we get along great. So you know, we really get along great. All right. But she's not a fundamentalist. So I think that's very important, right? But she does take her belief in God, you know, as something of value. And I totally respect that. I don't have any problem with that at all.
Right.
You know,
and here it is. Here it is. An atheist can respect his girlfriend's Christian beliefs, but a fucking Christian has to have disdain. See, that's why nobody likes y'all asses.
Yeah. They say respect is a two-way street. I agree, Joel. It is a two-way street, man. Everyone needs to respect each other. We don't have to agree, but everyone deserves respect as a human being, at least. You know, you know, everyone's entitled to that that dignity, you know. So
Yeah, I'm gonna respect everybody until they give me a really, really good reason not to.
Yeah.
It has to be something really bad though. Like it has to be some horrible shit.
Exactly. Like my girlfriend was brought up Christian. That's all she knows. You know, since she was a little girl, that's all she ever knew. All right, so who am I to make a big deal about that, right? I mean,
Right. That's just who she is, essentially.
And she always tells me that's who I am, and I'm not, you know, I'm really don't see ever changing. And I can totally respect that because I love her the way she is. You know, I don't need to change her. I just need to take care of myself, right? In my mind, you know. So we don't, you know, we talked about this sort of stuff here and there, but it was always with respect. You know, it was always with, you know, you're allowed to believe what you're allowed to believe. You know, and I'm allowed to have a different idea than you are. And as long as that's the, you know, the way you interact, it's okay.
Right.
I'm showing you disdain for people is sometimes needed. So if you're saying disdain is lack of respect, then I can agree that some people I don't respect. Like I don't respect people that have disdain for atheists. I have disdain for people that don't respect other human beings for their beliefs or non-beliefs. I do have disdain for them because I don't respect that. But as a person, I would respect them as a human being with rights, with human rights and things like that. What about a child molester? Would you respect a child molester? No. But we're, again, apples and oranges.
Yeah, I mean, dude's just like that's his own viewpoint and fuck whatever.
Maybe it's just not well thought out. You know, some people say things in a hyperbolic manner and they haven't really thought it out. And then when they're really challenged, they kind of see that, oh, maybe what I really mean is disrespect. Well, then you point that out and then like, oh, well, maybe what I really mean is certain people you can disrespect. And you see it kind of reduces with these people, you know.
Yeah, but he thinks that it's necessary to not have respect for people who don't believe in his God.
Right. Like disdain for the position or the behavior, respect the person. Right.
Doesn't it all come down to common decency to another human being?
Right.
Isn't that really what it comes down to? I mean, you know, even in the Bible, there's that story of the Good Samaritan, right? So the Good Samaritan was of a different ethnicity or belief or culture. And it was a culture that was hated by the one who was in need would never consider a Samaritan a good person, because that in that culture, the Samaritan was supposed to be, you know, not a good thing. It was supposed to be very negative. Mm-hmm. And yet it was the Samaritan who stopped and took the time to help that person. Right. And that lesson I agree with. You know, that was a cool lesson that Jesus taught, right? Yeah. And you know, that who's going to disagree with that? And of course, it's not to do with where the guy came from or the color of his skin or what he believed. It was the fact that he was a human being who took the time to care for another human being.
And that
doesn't mean you have to believe that he rose from the dead, though. That's where they lose me. You know, I think there are a lot of valuable things in the Bible, but
me too.
But I'm not even going to dismiss all of that. But I'm not going to believe that some dude rose from the dead. That didn't happen.
Yeah, I believe the Bible has some good things in it. I mean, and I'm a pretty hardcore atheist, right? I mean, I'll fight that fight, you know, in the public, all right? But I think there's some good, like that's a story I've always related to, right? The Good Samaritan. I relate to that story, and I think it's an important thing maybe people could learn. And it's from the Bible. And that's okay.
And Master Maverick says, by me saying I have disdain for atheists and you guys feeling insulted by that comes from the reason you class yourselves as atheists when I do not class you as atheists other than Lou. So I guess he only has disdain for you, Lou. But
that made it better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Master, you could always come over to my channel, and I'd be happy to talk to you live.
Yeah, I was just about to say
the type of thing I love to do.
Yeah, I was about to say, Master, I just put my link in there, invite link in the comments. So if you want to click on that and actually discuss it, because it's kind of hard to discuss things on a live chat, you can feel free to call in and we can have a civil discussion about it if you want to do that. If I ask the question, does God exist? There are three possible answers. Yes, no, I don't know. Okay. But you know, belief can be informed by knowledge. If you don't know whether a God exists one way or the other, can you really say you believe in God? Or can you really say you believe God doesn't exist? Like, this is different. And you could say you're an agnostic, but then agnosticism is informing your beliefs still. And remember, atheism is about belief. So you can be an agnostic and be an atheist at the same time.
Yeah.
So we can say three. I think Lou may say three, or I don't know.
I'm an atheist that doesn't believe in God. But I'm also an atheist that would recognize that I don't know with absolute certainty if I'm correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing, you know, and again, I'm open to believing in God 100%, but no one's really defined God for me other than the omni properties. And the omni God, I have logical problems with. That's all. Now, I'm not saying that because I have logical problems understanding that means it doesn't exist. I'm just saying, how can you get me to believe? That's what I ask precepts. Okay, everything you say is right. You know, I have no grounding for my morality. I have no grounding for, you know, knowing right and wrong, knowing what's possible, impossible. So how are you going to get me there? That part they don't want to talk about. They'll just say, whoa, you just presuppose it. Well, how can I presuppose something I don't believe in? How can you get me to believe in it? That's the big question.
Yes, and why do you believe in that? And is it persuadable? You know, is it something that offers some persuasion?
Yeah.
You know.
Now, he just doesn't agree with us there. He says that there's no such thing as agnostic atheists. It's very important.
That's what people call me, though. That's what people say I am.
And you ban Master Maverick from what he says.
I don't think, if I'm going back, I don't think I've ever banned anybody. I don't recall ever banning anybody.
Yeah. Well, look, Master Maverick, you can definitely jump on the stream. We're going to be going, we'll go for a little bit longer if you want to jump on, man.
Yeah, I definitely don't think I banned anybody. You might be mistaken because I don't think I banned anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you'd ban anybody just knowing you. Not yet anyways. I don't see anybody's really.
I mean, I don't mind, you know, duking it out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, generally.
Right.
And even like the guy, the pre-sup the other day, I didn't ban him. I
Right.
just got him off the chat, you know.
Right.
I didn't like ban him where he cannot communicate anymore, you know.
Okay, agnostic atheists cannot be possible because the hypothesis is unfalsifiable. So nobody can know God doesn't exist, and therefore agnostic in the term agnostic atheist is wholly redundant. I don't see that the case because you cannot know Like, I don't believe in leprechauns, right? Am I also saying that no leprechauns can exist? No. Leprechauns may exist. I'm agnostic, but I don't believe in them because I've never seen them. They may exist on some planet in the Centauri universe somewhere, galaxy or whatever. I don't know. You know, it's kind of like that.
You're basically leaving open the possibility that something could exist, but you're not going to believe it until you see evidence of it.
Yeah, we had a show one time a couple weeks ago. Remember the high value and the low value perspectives?
Right.
And one of the things that we kind of strive for is to be more high value than low value. And what that entails is admitting that you can be wrong, being open to being wrong, being open to changing your mind in the future based on new evidence. For us, that's a value. And so for us to say, I know God doesn't exist, or I know he does exist, would be a low, would kind of be leaning towards a low value perspective, because then we're closed-minded. We've already made our mind up and no evidence or anything could ever shake it. And we just don't think that's very rational.
Right.
No, and I think you know, there's all these different definitions out there, but I think if you ask somebody what their position is and they tell you, and then you just insist, no, that's impossible.
How do you talk to that person?
Well, people who use the term agnostic, atheist as a debate tactic. So when attacking, okay, well, those type of people probably aren't true agnostics.
And Master Maverick, I'm glad you recognize I didn't ban you. James Apperson became a mod on my channel, and that is because, you know, he'd been one that I most see on my lives, and I agree with James on a lot of things, but I'm glad you see that I personally did not ban you. All right. And that whole thing with moderators is kind of a new thing to me to begin with. Okay. Because I mean, I know people pop in chat and sometimes it's hard to follow along. And James, I did make a moderator after I talked about it with him because he has experience doing that. He has experience doing that on a pretty major channel. So I was kind of like, wow, you know, I'm pretty honored that he would be my moderator. Okay. Right. But I'm not going to comment on, you know, James banning you because, you know, and I don't know if he banned you just out of that particular chat or not. But glad you at least understand it wasn't me personally who banned you.
Right. He also says leprechauns provide no explanatory power. That's not the point of what I was saying. You're kind of attacking the wrong level of abstraction from my example. The level of abstraction I was trying to get you to see was the knowledge part, not the descriptive part of leprechauns. We all know that leprechauns are not defined as gods, right? So that's not really what I was going for. I was going for, you know, you could say the floating tea kettle around Jupiter. You know, is there a floating tea kettle around Jupiter? I don't believe it. Is it possible there's a little tea kettle floating around Jupiter right now? I'm sure that's possible. I don't believe it, but there is there's some non-zero probability that could happen. So I'm kind of agnostic about it, and I don't believe it at the same time. So not believing something because you're agnostic about it is possible, in my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't change your mind if new evidence arises.
Right. The term belief incorporates possibility of being wrong. Well, maybe. Maybe so. Depends on how you define or use words. But from what I understand, belief is like your commitment. You have some sort of commitment to a view. Like I believe in the Constitution. Well, I'm committed to seeing the Constitution as the guide for law in this country, right? Similarly, if I believe in God, I'm pretty much saying, look, I know in my heart, I know God exists.
It also can mean that you're in agreement with it, but not necessarily, all of it.
Yeah.
I believe in the way, at least the way I define these words, I tend to think a person could be agnostic Christian or agnostic Muslim.
Of course.
I mean, they could believe in Jesus, they could believe in all the doctrines of Christianity, but they could still maybe leave a little room for, well, I'm not really sure. Right.
Right. There you go.
So that's how I see those two.
They would call those doubters, and they'd be excommunicated.
Yeah. Doubting believers. Like, I would say I'm a doubting believer about a lot of different things.
Ye of little faith.
Yeah, ye of little faith, you have to be committed. But, we had went over that too. Remember that video where we talked about, we kind of showed the video of the church guy, the preacher was saying that doubt Christianity, every Christian doubts God. And doubt is normal for Christians. So even Thomas doubted and needed to put the finger into Jesus' side to believe. So don't beat yourself up for doubting. But then we showed the other side where it says that those who doubt God's existence aren't really theists, or they're not really being sincere, faithful believers. And we showed all these different, views on it, And
like on one hand, it's okay to doubt, but then on the other hand,
yeah, like
good enough.
And one preacher was saying, look, do you doubt your wife exists? You see her every day, you're with her every day. You don't doubt she exists, so why do you doubt God exists? And my answer was like, well, obviously, your wife is a real person that you could talk to, interact with, do things with. God isn't. So there's your answer right there,
And then Jesus, if he was able to put his fingers in Jesus's holes, well, we can't do that. We just got to believe what somebody told us.
Right.
And
we just got to believe that story.
And not even someone outside of the Bible, only people that are in the Bible who we don't even know existed.
You see, there's this thing that I'm going through now that I'm engaging with a lot of Christians online. One of the things I'm going through a lot is that when I say I was a Christian for many years,
excuse me,
a lot of Christians say, no, that's impossible. And it hits me like, what? It's like, how could someone know what somebody believed in the past? It's like,
they do that to me, Lou. They do that to me. Like there's this guy named Patrick Yarnell. He says stuff like that. He's a Christian apologist, and I'm an ex-Christian, and I was a Christian for almost 10 years. And he always tells me, you were never a real Christian.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. And it just seems like when I break it down, it seems like preposterous that somebody could actually think they can judge your thoughts, like what you used to think, and they point to a Bible verse.
Right.
And it's like, so you're going to go through life judging what other people think, all right, because you read something. It's like, come on.
And vice versa. Does it hold vice versa? Like, let's say you were a Christian and you left the church, or no, I'm sorry, the opposite. Suppose you're an atheist. You were never grown up as a Christian.
Right.
And then you had this epiphany or this Damascus Road Paul experience where you saw the light and you became a Christian. Were you really an atheist?
Right. And
would that be a good, like,
can an atheist throw that at me as an argument? Like, no, you never were an atheist.
Right. You were just a Christian the whole time.
It doesn't make sense.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure Paul wasn't a Christian. Like, he was killing Christians. Like, like, you know, I just think it's very egotistical to assume, you know, oh, well, I can explain that away. You were never really a Christian to begin with, or you were never really an atheist to begin with. I think both are fallacious, and I actually put up a video about that. And a lot of people couldn't understand that. A lot of people, I think, Joel, you didn't kind of understand that either out there. You made a few comments about it that, you know, that's not what happens to atheists, you know, pretty much. And then I, you know, because I didn't include in my video, you know, the stats, the statistics. I didn't think I needed to. I think it's pretty obvious that people do all kinds of stuff. You know, people leave atheism, people leave theism for all kinds of reasons, right? Like, that's just part of it. I mean, a lot of people that are Christians used to be atheists. I mean, let's just admit it. Like, why do I have to have statistics to back that up? But there is statistics that the reason they convert over is usually through, or sometimes through, a personal experience. Like, maybe they saw, like, I think Victor Vargas was one of them. Victor Vargas told me a story that the reason he's a Christian is when he was in prison, he saw the Holy Ghost or something. And that convinced him that Christianity was true. And I'm not going to tell him he's a liar. Like, who am I to say what he experienced or didn't? Now, I might not really believe what he saw was an actual Holy Spirit. Maybe
Right,
I could
that's
say
this-
it was an illusion or a delusion, or it could be a host of other things, but I just don't know.
All I know is, as a mystic, there's an underlying fundamental reality that I'm somewhat aware of that always corresponds with me in my more waking life. Kind of like how the subconscious mind always communicates with the conscious mind. There's an awareness of something that I can't see, but I know it's there, and it corresponds with me. I can see this play out in synchronicities, or, you know, and it's just very vague. So I'm not in the position to say what it actually is. And so I don't like to commit myself to some belief, because that would be dishonest. I don't really know, you know?
You know, that mystic, what you just said kind of like sounds like that mystic Sadhguru. I don't know if you know who he is, but
Yeah, I follow him.
yeah, there's this mystic, his name is Sadhguru, and
Sadhguru?
yes,
Sadhguru.
Yes, SAHD, and then guru.
Okay. Yeah, I
And
never saw him.
yeah, and you know, he doesn't really believe in God and stuff like that, but he has these experiences. But one of the things that he says is that, you know, I believe in my experience. And when I say I believe in my experience, I'm not saying that I believe my experience is God or Jesus or Vishnu or whatever. I'm just saying I have these experiences that have this sort of impression on me, and they kind of guide me, and I do whatever I have to do. But I'm not going to say that you have to believe in my experience. I'm not even saying that I believe in my experience. I'm not even saying that I believe my experience can be attributed to anything in specific. And he goes, and I think the reason I do that is because out of a sense of humility.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and lie to myself or anybody else, because maybe it corresponds to some sort of belief in Jesus or Vishnu or something. Like, it could be a host of things. Who the hell knows? Or it could just be how my brain works. Who knows? And who cares? And he's like, who even cares?
Yeah.
What's important is that you had the experience.
Yes,
That's
and
the important part, you know?
I can actually agree with that man.
Yeah.
Because I don't.
A lot of gurus say that, you know. I mean, most gurus do not believe in a God.
Right. Most don't.
Well, you see, the thing is, I think in order to have some peace of mind and some stability in, you know, within your own thoughts, some mental health, you kind of got to believe in your own thoughts. I mean,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you live not believing in anything you think? It would be like you'd really be kind of screwed up, right? That's how I see it.
The Bible even says that. The Bible says you have to be convinced in your own mind.
Yeah, because if I'm totally confused about everything I think, how in the world could I be a happy person?
Right. You have to be grounded in something.
Yeah. Yeah. And my grounding, because I have these conversations with Christians, my grounding is ultimately I trust in my own thoughts. Pretty much that's it. You know? And they'll say, well, now you're your own God. And I'm like, well, yeah, in that way, I am my own God, right? I mean, I trust in things I'm thinking.
But why is that so bad? It's not like you're going around and telling people to worship you.
Exactly. And that's why I say in that way only, because not like I'm telling everyone they have to believe me and worship me and any of that. That's crazy. It's like,
guys, I will have to check out at this point.
Okay.
But I just wanted y'all to know I had a good time. It's great seeing everybody.
Yeah,
Yes,
nice. Thanks a
seeing you.
lot. We're gonna end the stream soon. I just wanted to kind of end it off with this little video for everybody that kind of correlates to what we're talking about. I'll play it real quick and then we'll get out of here.
Between good and evil, it is just one man's belief versus another man's belief, isn't it? Now, this many people believe my story, this many people believe somebody else's story. Can you stop these people fighting after some time? Initially, they will say bye-bye. Initially, they say we are all brothers, we are together, this, that. But tomorrow, when these people insist our story is right, and these people also insist our story is the real reality, can you stop them from fighting? Anyway, they will fight. Please understand, all the fight in the world is just one man's belief versus another man's belief. Simply because they believe things that they do not know. Why don't you be sincere enough to simply see that you don't know? If you see, I do not know, what you will do? You will seek. Because nobody can live with I do not know for too long. So you just believe something that somebody told you, it quells you, it puts you to sleep, but it doesn't get you any closer to reality as such, isn't it? Just makes you believe one more story. Now, these stories, very entertaining, culturally rich, but if you're looking for enlightenment, if you're looking for liberation, if you're looking for going beyond your limitations, they are of no consequence. If you're just looking for color, if you're just looking how to decorate your life, then culture is useful. So let's not destroy the culture, let's enjoy the culture, but don't go by the stories. Don't believe or disbelieve the story, just enjoy the story, isn't it? Now, when it comes to creation, instead of asking why, if you see, right now you are a part of the creation, and like you said, you're entangled and stuck and drowning in the creation, as you say. Not everybody may be drowning, but at least quite a lot of people feel that they're drowning when things go wrong, at least. When things don't go the way they want them to go, they feel they're drowning, isn't it? So right now, in some way you're entangled. Now if you ask me how to go beyond this, instead of asking why creation, if you ask how to transcend creation, now I have a way, I have a method, I have a clear-cut path as to how to go beyond this. But if you ask me why, I can only tell you a story. Even if the story is true, still in your experience it is just a story, isn't it? Yes? Even if the story that I am telling is actually true, as far as your experience goes, it is just another story. If it appeals to your mind, you will believe it. If it does not appeal to your mind, you will not believe it. So, Stories won't transform people. You believe God to be a demon and demon to be a god, it makes no difference because after all, it's just your belief.
I relate to that.
Yeah.
But you know, when you leave religion and now you find yourself without, you know, that crutch, because religion does act as a crutch and a psychological anchor. I mean, that's what I found, you know, it gives you what they call that grounding, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's real, but it does act as a form of an anchor or a ground.
Of an anchor, yeah.
All
yeah.
right. So when you leave it, I do think you have to find another way to find peace of mind, you know, and to have mental stability, and that I think a person who leaves religion should do, you know.
Right.
And
right.
The good thing is there's all kinds of ways you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the religion will tell you there is no other way. Right? They'll say there is no other way but this way. And that's how they lock you into that you know, group. But in reality, there's a lot of ways to do that. And that's I find interesting. And you know, I had my own path, and that was kind of I made a little video about it, and I'm not a great speaker, but it was kind of like I went into psychology, you know, and psychology helped me to ground my mental stability, you know.
Yeah.
And it helped.
It's a really good. Yeah, it's really good too. So I like psychology. It's good teaching, you know.
Yeah, and I don't believe every psychologist, you know.
Right.
I don't think you have to be that extreme on all this stuff. You know, you don't have to, you know, buy everything. But I found in that concept of self-actualization by Maslow, you know, the guy with the hierarchy of needs, because he was a psychologist that was atheist. He wasn't, you know, a religious psychologist.
Right.
And that concept helped get me on the right track at the time, you know. So, you know, but I do think you have to do something to find peace of mind.
Of course. And you just have to find something you can trust. Because, like, if you come from a religious background and maybe your experience with religion wasn't that great, you wouldn't really trust taking the advice from religious leaders on things anymore.
Right.
You know,
because you walked away from that.
Right. You got away from that, and you're looking for another guide. And so a lot of people turn to science and things like that. And then some people look at science as, you know, they call them scientistic, where they feel like science offers every explanation for anything and everything. Like, what should I like? What kind of movies should I like? What kind of food should I like? What kind of relationship should I get into? They look for science to answer that. And what they don't understand, though, is science is more of a descriptive tool and kind of a way to explore how things work and maybe why some things work certain ways. And it's a whole discipline of correlations. It's like looking at all kinds of correlations to all kinds of things, and it can be helpful. It can be a good guide, but ultimately your values, you're going to have to come up with those on your own, because science can't tell you what to do with the nuclear missile. It can only tell you how to make a nuclear missile or an atomic energy or whatever, but it can't really tell you whether you should use it or not. That's going to be up to people's ethics and morality, another form of, you know, human thought. So everything is a little bit different, you know, and so in my thing, I'm kind of a holistic sort of thinker. So I like to use science as a guide, also like to explore ethics and metaphysics and, you know, different things to sort of come to some sort of opinion about the world and reality, and at the same time admit that all I have is an opinion.
Well,
you know?
if you're in religion, or at least fundamentalist religion, which is the background I come out of, that's not allowed.
Right.
Like, you can't even go to, let's say, a concept like that I found helped me, find peace or self-actualization. You can't even look at that, right? Because
Right.
it's outside of the belief system,
Correct.
And
I came from that background
you
too,
know.
so I know what you're talking about.
And I think that's not good. It's not a good place to be. I want to be able to explore where my mind can bring me, right? I don't want to be so bottled up. All right. And that even includes my atheism, I mean, I'm atheist. I know what I am, right? But I don't want my atheism to bottle up my mind, where I can't think freely about a concept,
Right.
because
And
that
how do
when
you?
you close your mind like that,
Uh-huh.
that's where you are just not going to grow as a human being, right?
Correct. That's kind of what this Sadhguru was talking about, believing in other people's stories, and there's no, especially if you're just not open to other cultures, other stories, other ways of looking at things in reality, you're really disrespecting yourself. You're taking on something that you're not really certain about and pretending to be certain about it because of what? Maybe peer pressure, maybe, I want to keep my job. I used to work at unfortunately, when I lived in California, I worked for this Christian company, and everybody was Christian, and I was sort of an atheist, I was, and I didn't believe in any of it. And the boss and everybody started suspecting. And I tell you, man, it was really kind of oppressive place to work, because people would go back and look at my social media to try to see what sort of comments I was leaving on my Facebook or this and that. And they started noticing a lot of anti-Christian comments and debates I was having. And then they started to question, are you really a fit for this company? Because, and the company had nothing to do with religion. It was a caption company. It was like we were providing subtitles and captions for movie outlets in California. Like, it's just that the people who ran the company happened to be Christian, and they wanted all the people that worked for them to be Christians or whatever, which was a form of discrimination, by the way.
I think without a doubt.
Especially in California.
Churches get away with that, like, totally.
Yes.
They employ people, because I have a understanding of mega church, because one of my kids was involved in a huge mega church. Okay. And they act as though they're employers, right? But they discriminate like crazy. So there's a loophole, it like allows them to discriminate in the church world.
They'll call it virtuous discrimination.
But as an actual employer that's not a church, they're not supposed to discriminate, It's like churches are actually allowed to discriminate.
Yeah, and there's some of the most they can be some of the most mean people I've come to notice. Like, people that take their religion so far, they really kind of don't apply their own morality consistently, or ethics consistently, you know what I mean? But one thing I wanted to show you, I did want to show you this because you were talking to that precept, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to show you, I know you've never heard of this guy. His name is Darth Dawkins.
I have heard of him. I've never seen him speak, but I understand he's like a pain in the butt.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to give you a taste of that because there's a atheist friend of mine. His name is Pine Creek. His name is Doug, but he goes by Pine Creek.
I've seen some of his stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so he dealt with Darth Dawkins, and he dealt with him in a perfect way. And this is how you deal with precepts. And maybe it could give you just a little suggestion or one piece of tool in your arsenal next time you deal with somebody like that Catholic traditionalist. I thought you might like this, but here he is.
Hey, I hope you got this for your recording. Hey, YouTube out there. Tom Rabbit likes to record these. Hey, Tom Rabbit.
Hi, Duncan.
Hey, this is Darth Dawkins. How you doing, Pine Creek?
Your voice sounds different.
Oh, okay. Let me just check the mic. How about now? Is that better?
Well, no, your voice quality, the mic quality sounds good, but your voice sounds different. Do you have like allergies or something?
No, it's me, Darth Dawkins. Now, you had mentioned that on the live stream here that you talked with me before, but you neglected to mention that our last conversation, you were entirely evasive about defending your atheistic perspective, and you wanted to change the subject to talking about Jesus rather than talk about defending your worldview. Do you recall that?
Yeah, is talking about Jesus bad?
No, but you used it as a diversionary tactic to answer questions about your worldview. Remember when
if using diversionary tactics to talk about Jesus, I think as a Christian you should love to use diversionary or to have people use that type of diversionary tactic, because isn't Christianity about Jesus? Shouldn't the focus be on Jesus?
See, you're doing it again. Okay, what I want to know from you is
what I want to know from you is it bad to talk about Jesus as a diversionary tactic?
it again. You're doing exactly what you did before. I'm calling in to ask you a question about your worldview. Are you willing to answer questions about your worldview?
No, I want you to assume that I'm wrong about everything.
Okay. So you're not willing. So if you can't answer questions about your worldview, how can you say anything is reasonable? Let me ask you a question. Since you don't hold
I want to talk about Jesus. Can we talk about Jesus?
Okay, here we go. Here we go again. This is your
Darth Dawkins. Do you want to talk about Jesus?
You
Darth Dawkins, would you want to talk about Jesus with me?
No, from you is, why are you asking?
I want to talk about Jesus. Here we have a Christian, a so-called Christian named Darth Dawkins, where an atheist is begging him to talk about Jesus, and he doesn't want to talk about Jesus.
No, because this is a diversionary tactic.
What? Okay, yes, it's a diversionary tactic because I want to talk about Jesus. It's a diversionary tactic about talking about Jesus. Is it talking about Jesus as a diversionary tactic wrong?
What you are doing is wrong because.
Why is it wrong for me to ask a question about Jesus? Can we talk about Jesus?
Why are you cutting me off? Every time I answer, you're interrupting.
Will you talk about Jesus?
There's nothing new that I could tell you about Jesus that you don't already know. You have explained. I want to know. You're over talking me again. Why do you keep cutting me off?
I want to ask you.
Why are you being so rude every time I talk?
I want to ask you questions. What you believe about Jesus? Can we do that?
You a question, okay?
No. I want to ask you a question about why you believe in Jesus. Is it wrong for an atheist to ask your views on Jesus?
I want the YouTube audience to know this is.
You have zero control here, Darth. This is my channel. You have zero power, zero control. But I will talk to you about Jesus if you want to talk about Jesus.
Okay, so you don't.
I will talk to you about Jesus because Jesus is the foundation of Christianity. Yes.
So, in other words,
is Jesus the foundation for Christianity?
Yeah. See, this is.
Do you want to I've already answered your question. You asked me, do you want to talk about such and such, my worldview? I said no. Now I'm going to ask you, do you want to talk about Jesus? And then all you have to say is no, and then the conversation's over.
Okay, what don't you know about Jesus?
No, I want to know what you know about Jesus.
Okay, you know what my views on Jesus
No,
are.
I do not know your views about
Yeah,
Jesus.
we have. We've discussed it before.
No,
Now,
barely.
may I
We
ask
just
you?
no. You may not ask me. I already said I will not answer your questions about my worldview. I want you to assume I'm wrong and inconsistent. I want you to believe that and assume that about me, and I want you to help me understand Christianity from your vantage point. I want to talk about Jesus from your vantage point. Can we talk about Jesus? Can I ask you questions about Jesus from your knowledge base?
Guess what? You just proved my point.
Yeah, you're right, Darth. I proved your point over and over again, but can we talk about Jesus?
Okay. Well, there's no point in talking about Jesus because everything you know about Jesus that you reject. You've already rejected Jesus, right?
Right, but I want to know. I want to know.
Is there something that you don't know about the Jesus of the Bible?
Is there something I don't know about Jesus in the Bible? Yes, I want to know. Did he really walk on water?
Okay. Well, you know that the in the gospel accounts that is detailed, but you reject that as not necessarily being historical.
Do you believe that he walked on water?
Now, okay, I'll be glad to explain to you what I think. I called in to ask you a question about your atheism.
Yeah, and I already said I'm not going to answer any questions about my worldview. I want you to assume I'm wrong about everything and I'm inconsistent and everything. I want you to assume the worst of me, but I want to ask questions about Jesus. I want to know if you believe Jesus actually walked on water.
Fake? You're a fake?
I want to know if you actually believe Jesus walked on water.
You're going to manipulate the conversation.
I want to ask if you believe Jesus actually did miracles. Do you really believe that, Darth?
Because you don't want to have a
Darth, do you believe that Jesus Christ walked on water? Yes or no?
You just proved my point.
Yeah, I will always prove your point. You're right about everything, Darth. I want to know, do you believe Jesus Christ actually walked on water? I got Darth Dawkins to hang up on me.
Yeah, that's pretty much awesome because he wouldn't let Darth control the narrative, and that's pretty much it. And I think that is the key, and I think I understand that now.
Yeah,
you can't let someone who's a bad faith actor control the narrative, right? You got to bring it back.
Yeah, because I used to always make the mistake of taking them seriously and like trying to like give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe these people are trying to make some kind of point, and I really need to start engaging better.
Yes.
But what I've realized is they're really bad faith actors.
That's what I'm saying.
They're just there to make you look stupid. Yeah.
They're not actually trying to get to truth.
Right.
That's not what they're there for. They're there to try to trip you up.
Right. That's their whole spiel.
And it doesn't matter even if you get tripped up because, tripping someone up doesn't prove anything,
Right.
But I mean, what I realize is if I do encounter these people, I have to try to control the narrative and bring it back to, something that is worth talking about,
Right.
So, yeah, that was awesome.
Now, have you ever heard of Cy-10 Bruggencate?
I recently saw him for the first time on a small channel where he was on a very small channel debating like an atheist. And I didn't feel he was very strong. I mean, I didn't get persuaded very much. Like I didn't say, wow, this guy is really good. Maybe because it's the same old. You know? But
it usually is. It's his claim is that he's got an argument no atheist can refute, and it's basically the same thing Darth Dawkins does. It's just the same old thing, and he gets into this spiel where he gets you to the point where you make some kind of claim. He tries to get you to make some kind of claim against his, like, you don't have any evidence. Like, he'll wait till you say, well, I need you to provide evidence. So far, you haven't provided evidence. And then he'll go, how do you know that? And then he'll say, because you haven't provided it. And then he'll say, okay, how do you know that? And he'll just keep saying that over and over. And it's so irritating but he thinks what he's doing is he's refuting you. He's trying to show you you have no reason to say anything without God. You know?
Right, but am I correct, Scott, in thinking, because I'm working through this myself as I go along, right? Like, am I correct to understand that regardless of me or you or anyone else possibly being wrong or thinking incorrectly, all right, or being tripped up, am I wrong to say that that doesn't prove a God whatsoever?
Right, you're right. It doesn't prove anything.
And that's the ultimate thing with the precepts, I think. It's like, it doesn't really matter. If you're able to make me look foolish, I mean, so what?
Well, one of the things they'll say, like, okay, here we go. Like, someone like Scientific Brugenkate would ask you, Joel. So if not God, what do you base your reasoning ability on? You say your brain, right?
Yeah, that would be my answer because I feel that I trust my own thoughts.
Okay.
So I'm happy saying that.
So is your brain the product of blind evolution, like chemical reactions, or is your brain kind of the result of God creating reason and rationality embedded in you as a human being? Would you believe the evolutionary story that it's pretty much like kind of a blind process, or would you believe that you were created?
And as an atheist, of course, I would say that I would say it wasn't blind, that there was a mechanism in place like natural selection, right, over time. But yes, I've come to trust in my own thoughts.
Okay.
I mean,
so it kind of like you'd be leaning towards more like your brain is the product of chemical reactions and electrochemical interactions inside your physical matter of your brain, right?
ultimately, yeah.
Ultimately, yeah. So this is what a person like Cy Brugenkate would say. So what you're telling me, Lou, is that you are kind of like, in your view, you're kind of like a bottle of Sprite shaken up, and I'm just a bottle of Coke shaken up. And when you flip the tops off, it all spews out thoughts and statements and everything. And you're saying that the fizzling Sprite is more true than the fizzling Pepsi.
Well, I would say, I mean, I don't think that's a good way to think about it, is what I would say. I mean, I would make it a little more realistic, which would be, you have your thoughts that have developed over time, and you're a product of the natural world, and I'm a product of the natural world, and I have my thoughts, and they might not agree. And to me, that's bringing it even more simple.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have to be bottles of soda, exploding.
Yeah. See, that's the little tricks that they do. They and I agree with you. It's a lot more complicated than that. And so what they tend to do is kind of narrow you down to say, oh, so you believe ultimately your brain is just electrochemical reactions. And you're like, well, yeah, I guess.
Ultimately, I actually do think that.
Yeah. And so what they'll try to do is they'll compare that to a bottle of Sprite or Pepsi being shooken up, because that, after all, that's a chemical reaction, right? And they'll say, so how does truth come out of a chemical reaction? And they'll try to make this absurdity sort of argument. Like, so what you're saying sounds so absurd. So you're telling me that some electrochemical reactions cause truth to come out of your mouth, or that anything. And so they'll say, well, my view is stronger because my view has more oomph. It has more solid grounding behind it. God, how is, You know, my presupposition is stronger than yours, and so that makes it true.
That is ultimately, I think, what they're arguing. Yeah.
Right.
But I don't. It doesn't mean much to me.
It doesn't mean right. That's the illusion. It doesn't prove anything. It sounds good on paper, but you're kind of like confusing, you know, something that sounds good, a perfect God. I mean, let's face it. God is a perfect explanation for everything because God is perfect. So, of course, it's a great explanation, right? That doesn't mean it's true.
But you could also make God, you know, the dog next door.
Right.
And it's equally as valid.
That's right.
You know,
and it doesn't tell you which God. It doesn't tell you anything like that either. It doesn't tell which God are we talking about.
And it's also putting you on the spot where I guess you might feel obligated to know things that you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I don't go there. Like I don't try to pretend I know things I don't know.
Right. You know? That's the point.
So it's like the way I look at it is you're the one doing that. You know, you're the one pretending you know things you don't know. You know, I would say to someone like Sai, you know, because I readily admit I don't know all things. And, you know, I go by the best of my cognitive ability to understand something. And of course that's limited, but it's also limited with you. It's not, you know, you're not the super being. All right. So you could be wrong in even your understanding of the super being.
Right.
So it's like, it's a go nowhere thing to me. It's like that infinite regression. It just goes backwards and backwards. And then ultimately it's a big nothing. It's kind of like
nothing burger. Yeah. Here's another one. I think if I'm not mistaken, this is going to be Robin or one of these. It might be traditional Catholic traditionalists, maybe. Let me see. But this is also a precept.
Grounding for.
Okay, but what does the grounding have to do with how I see evidence?
Because you have no way to ground those claims from one time index to the next. You could say this is.
I'm asking what does grounding matter?
It matters because you'll say, "Oh, the gospel message is incoherent," and then from the next moment, it'll make complete sense because there's nothing sustaining your claim. The truth.
Do you think I have the ability? Do you think I have the ability to find contradictions in the Book of Mormon or the Quran without grounding?
Well, no, not without grounding. No.
Without the ability to articulate my grounding.
No,
I can't find.
No, you cannot.
So if I open up the Book of Mormon and it says David should pick up a stick, verse 2, David should not pick up a stick. Because I don't have the grounding, I can't say that's a contradiction.
No, because you have no metric by which you can judge what a contradiction is, but for the Christian worldview.
Oh, so I can't even see that there's a contradiction.
No, I mean you can see it, but you know how? Okay,
no. Can I see it or can't I see it?
Well, you can't account for it. You can see it,
right.
You can't account for it.
Okay. I can't account for it, but I can still see it.
That's debatable. Like Matt Slick would say that you can't even see it. So that's why I'm kind of flip-flopping here. But
yeah, you are flip-flopping.
I
think you need to go back to Matt Slick.
I have to
take his course.
I have to stay in solidarity with my Christian brothers. But
do you see the problem?
No. Because ultimately, Doug, I have suspended my autonomous reasoning in favor of accepting the headship and sovereignty of God. Well, I'm still waiting for you to provide a worldview, like a competing worldview that accounts for intelligibility and grounds truth claims.
Through my ultimate presuppositions.
Yes.
That's your answer. That's my answer.
Your ultimate precept. Is that a concrete one or a concrete?
He's flipping the script on him.
Yeah.
Many.
Which
it
is kind of
both.
We spoke about that before a little bit.
Yeah.
The fact
That's a
is that
contradiction.
we all have some presuppositions.
Right. And what makes one better than the other,
We would have to look at these presuppositions, right?
Exactly.
I can't understand contradictions.
Nice.
So he just flipped the script on him.
But it doesn't, what I'm seeing is that whole presuppositional thing is just an attack on the way another person thinks.
Right. That's what
Isn't
it
that
is.
the whole thing?
Yeah, it is to make you look like a fool.
Yes. And that's what I feel it is. But if I'm a fool, does nothing to prove that there's a God.
Right. Exactly. And, even the word presupposition means it's like an assumption. And, an assumption isn't something that's soundly grounded. It's something you're assuming you're pre-assuming it before, your conclusion.
And
so it's kind of like circular logic. It's illogical.
You're building upon that.
Right.
You're saying, oh, this is concrete. Now I can build my argument from there.
Exactly.
And that's not, if your presupposition is not strong, your argument isn't strong.
Right. That's why the best thing to do is you can only go back so far, like you were saying. Can't I just say that I presume logic works and that, evidence counts, and can't that just be my presupposition? They'll say, no, you have to now justify why evidence works and why logic works. And that's where you need God. Because you have to go back far. It's like, who says I have to go back?
Right.
Farther?
What you just said, that just doesn't register with me. Where are you jumping off to that?
Right.
It's like there's a leap there.
Exactly.
I could go all the way with saying, okay, I could be wrong about my logic. I could go all the way there.
Yeah.
But now you're going to say, well, that means that my concept of God exists. It's like it's jumping too far.
Always, yeah. And its structure is just circular. I know God exists because I assume God exists.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Anyways, it is going on 3 hours and 15 minutes, so I'm gonna have to get out of here. I got to get something to eat, man. I'm about to starve to death.
Hey, go for it.
But
Hey,
when is your show on? When are you coming on next?
I don't have any times or anything. It's just like when I
just
feel
randomly.
like, yeah, like,
Okay.
oh, and I feel like I got time and I'll jump on and do something.
Gotcha.
I'm totally unscripted. So it's like, I don't have like a thought, oh, I'm going to, I try to think an hour or two before I'm going to do something and say, well, I'd like, I guess, to talk about that,
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way, although for the sake of other people that are involved in my channel, I have to kind of like schedule it together. But I'm kind of the same way. Like I think it comes with age. It's like I'll do stuff when I feel like it, because if I don't feel like it, I'm going to do terrible at it. So I just have to like wait for that moment to hit me. I have the energy today to do it. Maybe I can do it.
Yeah.
It's not like when I was young, I could do it at any time,
What I'm looking forward to in the future as I grow this thing, I'm looking forward to meeting more people like you that I can have some sort of like-mindedness with.
Yeah.
And I don't mind debating, Christians and whatever, these people. I enjoy it. So it's not like something I don't, that I think is bad. But I'm kind of looking forward to somehow growing, a community that has more people who are like-minded,
Yes.
because it's easy to like get Christians to be angry at you and, debate with you, right? It's not, it's like they're good at that, right? But it's my challenge is to try to find people who are not really Christian, or maybe came out of that world,
Right.
And then the conversations are more friendly, you know, just more
Yeah.
understanding on the same, you know, the same like-mindedness type of thing, you know.
That's right. I came to the same thing. Like, I need to build a community of like-minded people, because while it's true, you know, it's always helpful to have people to sort of, you know, wrestle with, because that helps, you know, in a lot of ways. It helps get the conversations going. It helps the algorithm get attention, a lot of different things. But we also need teamwork. We need team support. We need people that can advocate, and we can advocate for. And
Yes.
so we kind of need a little bit of everything to make things be a success. It's not just
That's
one thing.
why you need to know that I'm gonna support your channel, you
Yeah,
know,
and
in any
vice
way
versa, brother.
I can do,
Yeah.
you know. I mean,
That's
and
why I always try
that's
to catch your show so I can pop in and show some love or whatever, because we want to definitely do that, you know. And I
yeah.
appreciate you coming on too.
And we don't always have to agree either. Just
That's
that
right.
we could have respect for, you know, other free thinkers, because you're a free thinker for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man.
You
That's
know?
what we do.
And I
Definitely.
consider like people in fundamentalist Christianity not free thinkers.
Right.
They're not free thinkers at all. You
Yeah,
know?
the fundamentalist thinkers are kind of hard to talk to about things, because they've got their mind made up, and so they're not very open to other ideas. And you know, that's why I really wanted to do that show we did a few weeks ago about the high and low perspectives, because that's key to doing these things. We have to be open and understand out the gate, we're not going to agree on everything our interlocutor is talking about, and it's okay. And we can challenge it and we can explore it, and that's okay too. But just know, not everyone's going to agree with you on everything. You don't have to get mad and have disdain for them or whatever.
Right. Exactly.
You know, it's okay. Just
All right,
relax.
man.
Yeah,
Scott,
brother.
thanks.
Thanks everybody for joining in. Until next week. Peace.